Several reporters are trying to speak with Kim Jun-woo because he is the first SS rank hunter in the entire world. One of them comments that this dungeon has a very high level of difficulty and asks if the young man has any advice for rookie hunters. In his mind, the protagonist only thinks that this is the first time they've sent him on a mission in a long time. And even though he didn't say a word, for some reason the press still made it to the front of the dungeon. The hero knows this is a huge opportunity for the journalists as a whole. He then apologizes, stating that at the moment he just wants to focus on clearing the dungeon. Judging by everyone's reaction, the protagonist understands that his answer was expected. But not wanting to leave without giving anything, he decides to offer them a gift, his voice. In a loud and clear tone, he declares that his team always prioritizes civilian safety above all else, and that this will never change. As they watch the hero turn his back, all the reporters begin to praise the attitude of the #1 ranker. Kim thinks he's leaving a good impression when suddenly someone calls out, asking about the assault incident involving a janitor. Hearing this, a man begins to sweat cold. The nosy guy continues, saying it's about the incident in which the hero assaulted a janitor and slammed him against a wall. Mockingly, the kid says he's received plenty of information and is even friends with the victim. With a malicious smile, he remarks that it seems the #1 ranker is truly remarkable. After all, he can assault an elderly person and not have a single article written about it. After hearing this, all the journalists begin whispering and gossiping among themselves. Kim, for his part, is so shocked that he doesn't show any reaction at all. He simply turns around and says that it's an unpleasant rumor. Sarcastically, the gossipy kid just wishes the rank 1 good luck. Then the story begins explaining the universe, starting with the association that manages the supernatural dimension. This organization was created to protect civilians and the country from dungeons and their monsters. They ended up gathering many talented individuals with supernatural abilities and formed 4 teams. Among them is the operations team known as the Hunters, who are responsible for facing these monsters. And among these teams, Operations Team 1 is known as the Elite Squad. That's because their success rate is 100% and each member is high-ranked within the country. The leader of the team is the protagonist, who is currently irritated while reading online comments about his alleged assault on the janitor. Curious, a girl asks him what happened, and annoyed, he says he told her not to let that incident leak. Quickly, she replies that nothing was leaked, while Kim questions where that story came from. He also asked about the background of that reporter, but the driver explains that he was just an ordinary citizen. In disbelief, our hero wonders how that trash even knows about the incident. Then the driver suggests that the kid might be the son of the dungeon cleaning team's leader, Park Jum-ta. She also mentions that the biggest issue is that this isn't the only incident. The girl explains that multiple witnesses from other incidents are coming forward, and because of that, Lee should rest at home. Deeply irritated and with a terrifying look, Kim says he hates bastards who get in his way. He says the girl needs to do something about it because if this escalates, his reputation will be ruined. In response, she says she'll do her best. Changing the subject, Kim asks what the head of the association said about the case. The driver replies that the man hasn't said anything yet because he's busy, and Kim says he should be removed by the leader. He then says he needs to take action because even with all his achievements, the man will still act like this in the end. His partner then says that the hero's rank won't change even if public opinion is in chaos. Crossing his arms, Kim recalls that after finishing the dungeon and reading the articles, his anger hit its limit. His team members panicked and tried to stop him from going after the gossiping kid. He realizes that even though he got into the car and tried to calm down, his rage hasn't subsided. In his mind, the hero begins remembering moments when he was praised and called a savior. Frustrated, he realizes that years of accomplishments became meaningless because of all this. Grinding his teeth, he wonders how someone dared to stand in his way. Interrupting the leader's inner monologue, the driver asks why he did it. In response, the protagonist says that trash grabbed him first, so the girl questions why the man would do that. She says she knows the hero doesn't like the cleaning team, but points out that this is the first time they've had a direct conflict. Confused, Lee says he doesn't know and that he barely even remembers what happened. Then the hero says that once they arrive at the association, his employees should bring in that gossiping idiot so they can talk. Looking down, the leader says that this trash is trying to sabotage someone who's doing well while everyone else is busy. Suddenly, the protagonist goes silent upon seeing what's approaching. A gigantic truck appears right in front of the hero's car. Both the leader and his driver are in shock. At that moment, the truck is dangerously close to colliding. Without thinking twice, the hero uses his time overdrive ability. Thanks to that, the car narrowly dodges the truck with ease. Sweat and cold, he realizes that if he'd waited one more second, the asphalt would have been stained red. Furious, the man demands to know if the idiot driver happened to have been drinking. Paralyzed, the driver says she doesn't know. Getting out of the car, Kim says he was already angry about everything that had been happening. Walking across the asphalt, he asks who the hell the truck driver is. However, several bracelets rise from the ground like Dr. Octopus arms. They quickly latch onto the hero's wrists. He realizes they're devices meant to restrain people with supernatural powers, which is why he can't move. Not giving him a break, the truck suddenly appears behind the leader. He starts to sweep cold again. Even while trying, he realizes he can't use his abilities. At that moment, his back is struck by the truck. The pain is so intense that he grits his teeth. Then another truck appears, heading straight for him. The two trucks collide, turning Lee into a human sandwich. The impact is so violent that an explosion erupts at the scene. At that moment, several people appear near the hero. Unexpectedly, the protagonist begins to laugh and says that today is truly a horrible day. With a terrifying expression straight out of Berserk, he asks who dares to challenge him. Around him, several heavily armed and armored men position themselves to face their target. Without hesitation, they begin firing. In his mind, Lee understands that this is a well-planned trap, one that would have killed any average hunter. But he's fought monsters thousands of times. All those monsters he faced were in dungeons that pushed him to the brink of life and death. At that moment, the phrase echoes in his mind, "He won't die to something like this." Kneeling on the ground, he understands that this is what he had envisioned. But everything changes when he sees a supernatural weapon called Titan right in front of him. Slightly afraid and badly wounded, the hero tells the man that this is a bit too dangerous. Without letting him finish the sentence, the man strikes Lee in his most vulnerable spot. At that moment, a notification appears showing the parts of Lee's body that were hit, and the system calculates the probability of resurrection. Unexpectedly, the system simply confirms that the hero is dead. Wanting to get rid of him, the men throw his body into the water. Kim begins sinking deeper and deeper. Then the system announces that the leader has fulfilled the requirement for a secret ability due to his death. A massive glowing screen appears, stating that the secret ability is called Karma. Therefore, the protagonist will return 10 years into the past, and upon returning, his job will be assigned based on the karma of his previous life. At that moment, the boy is putting a monster into a garbage bag. Meanwhile, the system is assigning him a job. It quickly displays that the job assignment is complete. The hero looks somewhat relieved after finishing the task. Several people are working together to clean the dungeon. The system explains that his job is at the Supernatural Dimension Management Association, and that he has been assigned to the dungeon cleaning team. Sweating heavily, the now younger boy says that this job is really exhausting. Kim flashes back to the moment his life was taken and how he couldn't do anything about it. He wakes up immediately afterward, completely desperate. Sitting up, he thinks about how terrible that nightmare was. He starts wondering how long he slept for his body to feel so stiff. Suddenly, looking around, the boy realizes he doesn't recognize the place. It looks more like a pigsty than a 26 square meter studio apartment. Thinking to himself, he says he's sure this isn't his home, especially since it's smaller than his bathroom. Confused, the protagonist wonders if this could be Young's house, but quickly concludes that's even less likely. Staring at the toilet, Kim begins to feel genuinely scared. Suddenly, a message appears stating that his death has been confirmed, and that, as a result, the condition to acquire the secret ability has been met. Reading the notification, the boy says it feels like something straight out of a comic book. But then, looking at himself in the mirror, he realizes his face is the same as when he was 28, 10 years ago. Sweet and cold, the protagonist decides to open the system. He then discovers that the secret ability is called Karma, which has sent him back 10 years in time and cannot be cancelled. Reading the message, Kim has no other reaction but to collapse to the floor. He finally understands that it wasn't a dream, he really did die. And because of that, he now has a new job. Gritting his teeth, he remembers that at age 28, he was promoted to rank A, a rising hunter and the center of attention. But in this life, he's just a dungeon cleaner. The boy discovers that to cancel the ability, he'll need to become the Secretary General of the International Association within 4 years. That is the only condition to return to his previous life, which means if he fails, he'll be a cleaner forever and rot in that reality. We learn that the International Supernatural Association is an organization that oversees all other associations around the world, and its Secretary General holds more power than the President of the United States. Yugman Kim was an SS rank hunter. He was never appointed. Standing up, Kim concludes that not only does he not want to do this task, it's also impossible, so he'll just ignore it. After all, no one cares about karma. He figures he can simply start from scratch and return to being a hunter. All he needs are his abilities. To his surprise, all of his abilities are locked. Suddenly, another message appears announcing that the boy has acquired a new attribute. Smiling, he says that hopefully it's something useful, only to find out it's actually a passive learning trait that makes him obsessed with cleaning. After some time, Kim manages to tidy up the filthy place he was living in. Lying on the bed, he wonders how it's possible to go from SSS rank hunter to dungeon cleaner in the blink of an eye. Not to mention the fact that all of his achievements have simply vanished. Sighing, he asks himself whether he should just accept his fate and stick with cleaning. But still holding on to the pride of his former rank, he decides that's not an option. On top of that, he needs to find out who the men were that killed him, because they definitely weren't part of a regular unit. They could have been from a private guild or even someone within his own association. Suddenly, the boy's phone rings. When he answers, a man introduces himself as Park, the team leader, and asks if Kim is too busy to work today. Hearing it leaves Kim confused. The man, unaware of anything, says it's already been an hour since Kim was supposed to submit a report. Hearing the word dungeon instantly reminds the protagonist of the message about his new job. Laughing, Park says he knows the last job was rough, but this one will be easier. In the background, a young man comments that there are always some idiots who quit after the first day. and that if Kim knew how many people were counting on him, he'd be there. Hearing all this over the phone, Kim wonders how those cleaners can talk badly about someone like him. The team leader then tells the guys to be quiet because the protagonist might have a good reason for missing work. He then speaks directly to Kim, saying that if he's ever facing any difficulty, he should inform them ahead of time next time, using the number he just called from. Hearing the man's name again, the boy remembers where he knows him from. Park tells him he can take the day off to rest, but Kim says he's already on his way and will be there soon. Sometime later on the bus, Kim reveals that he was surprised to find he had no nice clothes at home and no luxury car, and that he couldn't call a cab because he didn't have a single cent in his wallet. This means his relationship with the world has changed and his assault on Park hasn't happened yet. Reflecting, he says he has nothing against the man, but if he was the one who ordered his death, things are different. Because he's sure something is off with the way everything happened. It's clear now that someone caused that accident on purpose. And he had an anti-supernatural device prepared to prevent him from using his abilities, along with a firearm designed for anti-monster combat and supernatural subjugation called Titan. It was far too expensive for Park to afford as a janitor, but that doesn't mean he couldn't have hired someone, especially since his son also seemed to hate him. Annoyed, the boy wonders if giving someone a little shove counts as assault now. It then says the man should have understood things back when he was still calm. We're taken to the moment when the fight happened, when Park introduced himself as the leader of the dungeon cleaning team. Curious, Kim asks what business the man has with him. Park says he heard that Kim had suggested a reduction in the number of janitors, even though they're already struggling to keep up with the workload using the current team. Kim, uninterested, asks if that's all. He then quickly adds that it was merely a suggestion. He has no actual authority. Park states that everyone knows how much influence the young man holds as a hunter, and that's why he's begging him to reconsider. In his thoughts, the protagonist admits he figured the suggestion would eventually reach the cleaning team, but he didn't expect such an irritating conversation. Out loud, he asks if Park knows that lizards cut off their own tails is a very inefficient defense mechanism. Yet when danger appears, they do it without hesitation, because that's how they survive. They don't care if it hurts, since it's a last resort. Not quite understanding, Park tries to respond, but Kim cuts him off, saying that every human thinks they're necessary in the world. Then he tells the man to truly ask himself if that's really the case, because the association is facing financial difficulties, and as a result, the elite hunters' salaries will be adjusted. And since the organization's priority is to protect civilians from dungeons, they need to pay those who actually do that. After all, if the hunters aren't paid, they won't work. Shouting, Park says there's a limit to what Kim can do. But the protagonist is the cleaning team doesn't do all that much anyway, making Park even angrier. Unbothered, Kim says Park should just get over it. The man then says that his team also takes pride in the work they do, and that, as Kim himself said, the association's priority is to protect civilians. That includes him and his staff. That's why he's asking for the request to be reconsidered. Reversing course, Kim states that he thought he had already said enough for Park to understand. But instead of being thankful for not having to put his life on the line, Park chooses to whine, even though it's thanks to the hunters that they can clean safely and fill their bellies like parasites. Grabbing Kim by the collar, Park demands to know what the hell he's talking about. That's when Kim uses his power to throw Park against the wall. He immediately realizes that might not have been the best move, but still thinks the man is being overly dramatic over just a little shove. Taking out his phone, he calls Young to go over and check the situation, since he can't get involved in this kind of thing. We return to the present moment in front of a yellow-level dungeon. Its boss is the Foxtrot Centipede. Standing still, Kim reflects that he really has gone back 10 years. Suddenly, Park waves and calls out to him. With a dark expression, the protagonist makes it clear that he's now convinced Park was the one who killed him, even if this team leader exists in a different version of reality. As Park approaches, Kim glances over and confirms that this is exactly how he remembers the man. A typical middle-aged guy around 50 who doesn't look capable of killing anyone. Slapping Kim on the back, the team leader cheerfully announces to the others that he knew the kid would come. Mockingly, Sang says of course he came, it's only because he got caught trying to skip out. Meanwhile, Jang remarks that last time Kim said he didn't know how to do anything, and that turned out to be true. Confused, So even asks why Park wants to bring someone else onto the team when 4 people are enough. Park replies that that's enough talk. They can start working now since they only have 45 minutes left, thanks to Kim being an hour late. Choosing not to argue, the older man says it's better if they head in before they get criticized again. He then hands Kim a piece of gear, which leaves him puzzled upon realizing it's a gas mask. Seeing that the boy isn't moving, Park asks if something's wrong. Shaking his head, Kim says he just doesn't really know what a dungeon cleaner does. We learn that in the Supernatural Dimension Management Association of the Republic of Korea, there are 4 main teams: the control team, the hunter support team, the operations team, and the cleaning team. The control team monitors dungeon appearances and gathers information, The hunter support team produces and maintains weapons and items and also provides general operational support. The operations team consists of hunters who eliminate monsters inside the dungeons. And there's also the team responsible for disinfecting and cleaning dungeons, a team the protagonist didn't even know existed. Not understanding much, Kim wonders why the team is pretending to be busy. Suddenly, Park calls out to him and asks where he's going, saying it's dangerous to walk around alone. Turning back, the boy says he was heading to the boss room, just like they agreed. The man then says that the room isn't that way, but the protagonist disagrees, leaving the other team members a little surprised. So Yan says that if he doesn't want to go, he can just say so, while Jang says he's starting to get irritated. As the protagonist doesn't seem to care, Sang says they should just ignore him and move on, but not before handing him a map provided by the control team. We learn that a dungeon that has been cleared is mapped out by the hunters who were assigned to the operation, so there shouldn't be any chance the map is wrong. Even so, Kim insists that he's right and asks if that's really how the control team works. Eyes wide, Sang says the kid must be on drugs, but Park decides to ask how he's so sure. The protagonist says it's not confidence, and just as he's about to reveal that he's already cleared this dungeon before, he decides to stay silent since no one would believe his story anyway. Putting his hands in his pockets, he says he's ready to move forward, which only makes the others more irritated and confused. Standing next to Park, he asks what it means that only 45 minutes remain. The man explains that that's how long until the dungeon closes. Without showing much reaction, the boy processes the situation and remembers that all dungeons naturally vanish about 2 hours after being cleared. Kim then asks why they would clean a place that's about to disappear, causing the man to laugh, before explaining that a cleared dungeon doesn't vanish. It just enters a resting phase before monsters reappear. So if the dungeon reopens with piles of monster corpses still inside, it becomes a problem because it's easier for hunters to get lost. On top of that, the gas released by rotting creatures is lethal to humans, and the pathways can get blocked. The protagonist says he gets it, but Park makes a point to say that their job is to help hunters focus on clearing the dungeon. It's a job to be proud of, because without them, there would be no hunters. Still, the boy thinks it's all nonsense. As the man continues explaining that their task is to remove monster corpses and clean up after the dungeon is cleared, and in some cases even rescue hunters, Kim scoffs in his thoughts, saying he's never heard of any of that in his life. Finally, the team arrives at the boss room marked on the map. Taking the lead, Sang decides to open the door, but when he looks ahead, something shocks him. It's absolute nothingness, because the boss room isn't there. Kim says he warned them that wasn't the right location, while the others try to figure out what happened. The protagonist then says they should just finish up and get out of there. But the team huddles together, analyzing whether they have time to clean everything in 22 minutes. Sang says it's better to do it and get criticized, and Jang agrees, as does So Yun. Desperate, the boy asks what they're even talking about. Park then explains that the conversation is about the remaining time to finish the job, since that's the main goal. Shouting, Kim demands to know why they do that if there are only 22 minutes left and a dungeon can take up to a year to reappear. Laughing, the man casually says that in that case, they'll be trapped inside. Frustrated, the boy says they must be out of their minds to risk their lives just to clean. But the team leader says it's nothing new, and that they'd better get moving. As he walks past the protagonist, Sang says that if the boy wasn't planning to leave, he shouldn't expect anything from him anyway. Only Kim and So Yeon remain. She stares at him firmly before walking past and following the others. Kim is furious, since in 15 years of work he never once failed to clear a dungeon, and now he's being looked down on by mere janitors. Deciding to stay, he says there's a narrow passage in that room. Turning back, Sang says that's just what they needed. But the protagonist tells him to shut up and listen. He then states that the distance from here to the boss room is 500 meters, and by the route he knows, it will take only 5 minutes running to get there. So this time, he'll lead the way, and whoever wants to follow can do so. Seeing Kim run, the team decides to just go after him. Shortly after, they arrive at the destination. Standing in front of the boss room, everyone is completely stunned to realize that it really was where the foxtrot centipede had been all along. In disbelief at the creature, which is over 10 meters long, Sang admits that the boy was right. Meanwhile, Kim observes the condition of the room and thinks the battle must have been intense with around 5 to 6 casualties. But the hunters manage to find the creature's weak spot on its hollow forehead just above the chin. The black-haired boy says there's no time left, so they need to start immediately. However, Kim blocks him from moving forward because he sensed that the giant centipede wasn't entirely dead. Shocked, the team members ask how something like that is even possible, while the protagonist finds the whole situation a pain in the neck, especially since fighting the creature without his abilities would be incredibly difficult. Yet suddenly the monster collapses to the ground completely. It turns out it just wanted to take one final breath before dying for good. Jang then says that really was surprising and asks Kim to step back since it's his first time seeing a dungeon boss up close. The boy asks what he's talking about, and the other says it's okay if Kim can't bring himself to touch the creature. Given the look on his face, hearing that makes Kim even more annoyed. to the point that he wants to prove he can do something, so he grabs a knife. Seeing him approach, the team members ask what he's planning. Getting into position, Kim says that if the goal is to dismantle the centipede, they should do it properly so no one breaks their wrist. After all, the knife will only go through segments 3, 6, and 12, and since the nerves still seem to be reacting, they should ignore it if the monster moves suddenly. Hearing those instructions, everyone is left speechless, but Kim asks if they're just going to stand there and watch. After some yelling and scolding, the protagonist says they shouldn't step on the creature's strawberry juice, it's way too sticky. Sang asks if Park showed the control team's file to the guide, but he says no. In disbelief, the young man says there's no way a rookie could know all that. The older man then says that information isn't even in the file, which leaves the cleaner even more stunned. Time passes, and we see that Kim's cleaning obsession skill is fully active, to the point that all that remains of the centipede are its bones. The protagonist sighs in relief after finishing, then wonders why the hell he feels so accomplished. Park approaches and asks if this really is the boy's first time doing something like that, while the others remain surprised. Jang says someone promising just joined the team and jokingly tells Sang to be careful. The leader then says it's time to leave since there are only 5 minutes left before the dungeon closes. So with their backpacks, the cleaning crew finishes another job. Laughing, Park says it went easier than he expected. But suddenly, some of the creature's strawberry juice starts dripping down Kim's leg, causing him to get stuck to the floor despite knowing full well to avoid it. Annoyed, he says he's fine and tells everyone to step back since the substance acts like glue even back when he was a hunter. He couldn't get free from it because he didn't yet know that heat could melt it. When the protagonist tries to use his Hellfire ability, he discovers it's still not available, which means he's really screwed now. Worried, Park asks if Jang brought the rope. Immediately, he grabs it and ties it around Kim's waist. Then everyone starts pulling as hard as they can, like it's a game of tug-of-war. The problem is, the boy doesn't budge an inch, and only 1 minute and 55 seconds remain before the dungeon closes. Since the trick doesn't work, Park tells the protagonist to take off his protective suit, but So Yeon says it's dangerous due to the gas level. Desperate, the man asks if the girl wants them all to get trapped in there. With wide eyes, the boy wonders why everyone would be trapped when he's the only one stuck. He then remembers that lizards always cut off their tails to survive, so maybe it's better if the team just abandons him. Snapping him out of his thoughts, Park once again tells him to take the suit off quickly. Obeying, Kim mutters that everyone there is less intelligent than lizards, but the idea doesn't work either. Taking charge, the leader tells everyone to evacuate, since those who can escape should survive. Disagreeing, Sang says that's ridiculous. Shouting, Park says it's an order. Turning his back, the black-haired boy says there are only 10 seconds left. Then he starts a countdown. Park runs toward Kim, determined to swap clothes with him, to make sure the boy gets out safely. All that's left behind is a pair of pants and 1 boot. Outside, the rest of the team watches nervously, praying that their team leader comes out any moment. We see the two are almost there, but only 3 seconds remain, and the portal is almost closed. Suddenly, the portal vanishes, and everyone's jaws drop when they see the two made it out at the last second. Sang, So Yin, and Jang run over to Park, overjoyed. The man also smiles, while Kim lies on the ground in disbelief that he almost died in a dungeon with no monsters while cleaning. The team leader offers his hand and asks if the boy is okay, and adds that the gas level was lower than expected, and that he worked hard for his first dungeon of the day. Mouth wide open, the protagonist asks what he's talking about, only to find out that there are still 5 more dungeons left to clean. It's revealed that across the country there are 26 teams, and including freelancers, there are 11,300 registered hunters in Korea. On the other hand, there are only 5 dungeon cleaning teams totaling 25 people. So each team must clean 33 dungeons per day, and if they're unlucky, even more than 5. Right from the very day Kim decided to go to work. At the end of the shift, someone suggests they have dinner together because of how hard the day was. Stang says he's in if Park pays, but the man replies that they'll be splitting the bill tonight. He then calls out to Kim, asking if he wants to come too, and if he'd like to eat something special, since he's the star of the night. Showing that teamwork isn't his thing, the protagonist says he's not going, catching everyone off guard since they weren't expecting a refusal. In his thoughts, the boy says he doesn't need to build any kind of relationship with those people. He tries to explain, but Park tells him he's not obligated to go. Sweating nervously, the boy insists that's not it. But giving up on talking, he just turns around and waves goodbye. The team leader is left confused but congratulates the boy on a job well done. Smiling, So Yeon says she'll see him tomorrow and tells him to be careful on the way home. This moment leaves Kim deep in thought. Later that same night, lying in bed, he thinks that it couldn't have been Park who killed him in his past life. No way that man could be so heartless, which means someone else must be holding a serious grudge. The boy recalls the rookie from the team he used to curse out, Min Yoo-jin, whom he broke up with, and Hwang from the control team whose shin he used to kick. Annoyed, the protagonist wonders why there had to be so many people. Then he says it doesn't matter anymore now that he's regressed. So if he really wants revenge, he needs to get rid of the karma skill and return to his past life. But to do that, he has to become Secretary General of the International Association, which will be very difficult now that he's just a lowly janitor and has no way to join the control team. Getting up, Kim decides to open the system. He realizes there was something he missed earlier that morning, the conditions for unlocking abilities. Laughing, the protagonist says that in that case, he doesn't need to stay a janitor, only to discover that all the conditions are tied specifically to the cleaning team. Furious, the boy crushes a water bottle in his hand, because now he'll have to make the cleaning team the very air he breathes. Then, seeing the discarded bottle on the floor, his cleaning obsession skill activates, confirming that yes, this is exactly what his life has become. Unable to control himself, the protagonist gets up and starts cleaning every bit of dirt he can see, all without being able to relax for even a second. Suddenly, a message appears stating that the Super Boost ability has been unlocked because the condition of 1 full workday was fulfilled. In no time, a week goes by and Kim is now taking packed, filthy buses every morning, which means he's been cleaning dungeons for a week. We find out that in 7 days, the boy cleaned 25 dungeons, used 60 liters of bleach, dismantled 30 monsters, and unlocked a few abilities, including the one that became available after completing his first day on the job. That ability is for mobility and highly efficient, but only useful when linked to other offensive skills. And since it can only be activated in combat, it's not even usable for training. Reflecting on it, the boy concludes that it's still better than nothing. However, earning 60 million won a year and being in the #1 profession in the country are extremely hard goals to reach, especially with a job like dungeon cleaner. And even though some conditions are easy, they're still a bit abstract. One of the least complicated is increasing the association's interest, which would have been easy to meet if he were still an SS rank hunter. But in his current state, who would believe the word of a janitor? A bit lost, Kim wonders if he should try reaching out to his former team to start building connections, but quickly concludes that it won't be easy to find those people. After all, Korea has over 10,000 hunters. Suddenly, as he looks out the window, the boy shouts out of nowhere, waking up the man who had been sleeping on his shoulder. He then says he missed his stop. Arriving at work, he asks why there are only 2 team members present. Sang says Kim is in no position to complain, and then explains that Park went out to buy supplies. The protagonist says they're 10 minutes late and the boy agrees, asking why Kim himself was late then. Kim says he missed his bus stop. Smiling, the black-haired boy says he brought coffee. Thinking about it, Kim notices how much the guy's attitude has changed compared to the first day. Deciding not to take the coffee, he heads straight into the dungeon. Sang then says that actually, the dungeon hasn't been cleared yet, proving that things don't always go as fast as the protagonist would like. In his mind, Kim states that this isn't a dungeon he's cleared before, but even so, it's at most a blue-grade dungeon. So there's no reason hunters should be struggling this much to finish the job. Sitting while he waits, he mutters that they're all pathetic and idiotic. He starts thinking maybe he should go in to help, but we soon learn that was a mistake. 30 minutes later, we see the protagonist furious about something. Specifically, the hunters taking forever to come out. Suddenly, several of them begin emerging from the portal and Kim concludes they must all be D rank. Not even worth the pay they get. Then, upon seeing long, dark hair, the protagonist recognizes a very familiar face. It's the hunter Minju, who looks more like an actress than anything else. We learn that the girl used to be a direct subordinate in Kim's old team. Now with wide eyes, you can't understand what she's doing there. Noticing she's being stared at, Minju approaches and asks if the protagonist has a problem with her. Nervously, he says no, while thinking that she was the last person he wanted to run into. And even though he's considering reconnecting with his old team, Minju is definitely an exception, since she hated him for no clear reason. Even more so after he suggested she retire because of her injury, getting cursed out with every word in the book. Even though he said it for her own good, the girl had too much pride, even if she had great skills. Suddenly, Soo-yeon calls out to Kim and asks if he knows the hunter he was staring at. Denying it, the protagonist says the girl just reminded him of someone. Nervously smiling, the cleaner says she only asked because of the threatening expression he was making, so she thought Minju might be an ex. Furious, Kim asks what she's talking about, but the girl says it was just a joke. Park arrives and asks what's with the weird atmosphere, but the protagonist says nothing happened. Sang then adds that the boy just ran into his ex. Trying to move on, the boy says it's time to work. Inside, they find that the dungeon is blue-grade and set in a civilian area, created out of buildings. Kim says the only thing he knows about the place is that the boss is a humanoid monster. He then remembers how he was bombarded with questions due to his extensive knowledge about dungeons. Park begins giving instructions and says it's important to check and clean every corner and crevice because of the type of dungeon. Meanwhile, the protagonist is supposed to follow him to the boss room. Sometime later, we see the team leader shocked at how human the boss appears. It's Vega, a creature that looks like a woman and is only 160 centimeters tall. The protagonist then says it's possible to carry the creature out without disassembling her, since doing so might be a bit uncomfortable. Finding that odd, Park asks why. But our boy says it's nothing, even though he feels something is off. After all, the Vega he knows isn't very dangerous as long as the hunter is aware of her quick movements. So Minju shouldn't have had so much trouble, since she's a powerful B-rank hunter, and could even be S-rank if not for her injury, as she has better sword skills than he does. which means the young woman should never have struggled against a glue-grade boss. Suddenly, Park asks why Kim is still standing there instead of helping him carry the monster. As he approaches, Kim concludes that the girl's situation no longer concerns him. But upon seeing the marks on Vega's body, he realizes something is seriously wrong there. Kim wakes up at 5 in the morning after sleeping only 2 hours, lamenting his bad luck. Even as a hunter, his schedule was never this tight. Annoyed, the black-haired young man asks Park why they were called at that hour. The man replies that he doesn't know either, but there's nothing he can do, which doesn't help with the guy's irritation. Still sleepy, the protagonist thinks it makes sense to be angry, given that it's already an hour past the scheduled time. A girl approaches and says he looks really tired. Turning to her, Kim agrees and asks if she is too. Smiling, the young woman says she's always been full of energy. Looking at the dark circles under her eyes, our boy wonders if she's actually doing okay, then asks her to take it easy. Suddenly, the hunters begin to depart after a 90-minute delay. Nervous, the protagonist wonders why he keeps running into that specific hunter with so many dungeons out there. The girl stops in front of him and they stare at each other, clearly showing how unpleasant that encounter is, even though they don't exchange a single word. Standing a bit further away, the huntress asks why the guy is in her way, which really irritates him. Looking back, Kim remembers what happened in his life 10 years in the future and wonders if he should tell the huntress. He then concludes there aren't many reasons to care about her. We return to the memories of our boy, from when he went to visit the young woman in the hospital, and got irritated that she didn't even bother getting up when he arrived. As he gets closer, he asks how someone who uses a sword can ignore a muscle inflammation like that, instead of improving her left hand use, since relying only on her right arm is what ruined her shoulder. Unafraid of him, the girl asks why he didn't warn her about it earlier. A bit surprised, Kim says she's only saying that because she regrets letting things get to this point. But since nothing can be done now, she can't continue in the profession and must retire immediately from that moment on. After handing her a paper, the protagonist adds that everyone at the association agreed with the decision, leaving the huntress with no arguments. Being rather insensitive, our boy says that if she pushes herself, even basic daily tasks will become difficult. Furious, the huntress insists her injury is nothing, and that he knows very well the reason she is the way she is. Determined, Kim says that in that condition, the young woman will be nothing but a burden to the team, and that things would have been different if she had told him she was in pain. Frowning, the girl asks if he really thinks she should have done that. Saying yes, our boy asks if she thought he would just magically guess. Screaming, the young woman says she mentioned it several times and that she even told him she was going to ask the support team for a full examination. He said that everyone on the team was in pain, so there was no reason for her request, meaning he was the one responsible for her hiding and enduring the pain for so long. Furious, Kim asks how something like that could possibly be his fault, since it was the young woman who should have taken better care of her body instead of returning to work just because he ordered her to. With her head lowered, the huntress says that even so, she can still work, she just needs a few days of physical therapy. But the protagonist says she can't do anything until she recovers, which makes her a parasite. The young woman then asks if her leader ever once saw her as a teammate, then apologizes for asking such a stupid question, since she always knew she was just a tool, and that she never liked him from the start. Kim responds that this is disrespectful to him as her superior. Crying, the huntress says it's the absolute truth, because the guy never treated anyone beneath him well, always looking down on everyone with that same condescending gaze, so she doesn't care about anything else he says. Then she slaps the protagonist across the face, and tells him to be born as a human in the next life and stop being such a bastard. Leaving his memories, Kim admits to himself that he really acted like a jerk. But he doesn't remember her ever telling him she was in pain, even though he knows he probably didn't care enough to notice, and that if not for that, she would have become a great hunter. Seeing that the girl's problem seems to be starting again, our boy says it genuinely bothers him, deciding right then to do something about it and get the huntress' attention, to tell her to strengthen her grip with her left hand. A bit irritated, the young woman turns to him and asks what he's talking about. Kim explains that when she holds her sword, she uses too much strength with her right hand, which puts a lot of pressure on her shoulder. That sooner or later it'll become overstrained to the point that she won't be able to be a swordswoman. So she needs to start using her left hand more to take the weight off her body, which will also make her stronger. Without showing much reaction, the girl just mutters, "All right." Our boy quickly realizes she's not taking him seriously since he's just a cleaner, choosing to simply walk away while asking her to get some tests done because she's smart and will know what to do. Confused, the huntress wonders what the guy is talking about. The next day at the hospital, a doctor says it could have turned into a very serious problem, leading the girl to conclude that Kim actually knew what he was talking about. The doctor explains that her shoulder is inflamed, which over time would have developed into a complicated injury. But since it was caught early, he'll prescribe an anti-inflammatory, and the most important thing is for her to correct her posture by strengthening her grip with her left hand. In her thoughts, the girl remembers that's basically what the weird cleaner had said. We're taken to another scene, where Kim says he's so exhausted he feels like he's going to die, while Park laughs. Next to him, the black-haired guy asks how he managed to keep his ex-girlfriend waiting until now. Looking ahead, the protagonist realizes the young man is referring to the huntress and wonders why she's even there. Behind him, the other cleaners ask each other if they should give the two some space, while quietly slipping away after saying their goodbyes. Crossing his arms, Kim says he's tired and needs to leave to catch the last bus. Catching him off guard, the huntress places her sword over his shoulder, then asks who he is and how he knew. Furious, our boy shows he's shocked by her boldness, then demands to know what she's talking about. Getting straight to the point, the young woman says she's talking about her shoulder. Lying, Kim says he just pretended to know, because he wanted to give some tips about things he saw online. The huntress then asks if he's being serious. Since the technique she uses is kept completely confidential, but he seemed to know exactly what it was and what her problem was. In his thoughts, our boy realizes he got involved unnecessarily and is now a suspect, since the girl's technique is so special that there's no way a dungeon cleaner would know about it. Making up another lie, Kim says he saw sword marks on the monster's corpse, and that something stood out among all the other wounds. The fact was that the injuries made with the right hand were deep, but the follow-through techniques were shallow. And since Vega is a boss known for her high attack speed, a well-known method to face her is to use that speed against her to counterattack, but there were no signs that this had been done. So he concluded that the girl's body couldn't keep up with the monster's speed. Lowering her sword, the huntress says that for a moment, her shoulder really did tense up. Kim then says those symptoms might be nothing in ordinary life, but he's certain that for a swordswoman, it's a different matter. Revealing in his thoughts that the reason he could give such advice is because he was the world's first SSS rank hunter. Shocked, the huntress says, just as she thought, he's a freelance hunter. Our boy then asks what kind of nonsense she's talking about. The girl says she heard that there are A-rank freelance hunters in Seoul who only reveal themselves in high-risk dungeons. The protagonist denies it, saying he's not a hunter. The girl then asks what he is. Mocking her, Kim asks if she can't tell just by looking that he's a cleaner, and that he needs to go because he has work the next day. Reflecting, he thinks that if he were a hunter, the girl would try to get something out of it, but that he's sorry to be just a dungeon cleaner now. Suddenly, the huntress says a loud thank you, making the protagonist whip around, because he never thought he'd hear that from Minju's mouth. Blushing, the huntress says something else, but we aren't told what it is. The next day in a large building, we see that the girl asked to take a break from work, which didn't make her boss very happy. Tapping his fingers on the table, the man asks if she wants to take time off just because her shoulder hurts a little, saying he didn't even know that was actually an option. Minju says she also plans to improve her skills during this time, but Lee Soo doesn't seem to believe her. When asked to tell the truth, the huntress says she'll try to learn some sword skills. Through private lessons, Lee then asks if the girl met some martial arts master or boyfriend. Annoyed, the girl says that actually her teacher is a janitor from the dungeon cleaning team. Perplexed, the operations team captain asks if Minju didn't have anyone better to hire. Showing her determination, the huntress says she'll figure out what's best for her on her own. The man then asks if it was that janitor who told her to get examined, catching the girl off guard. She concludes the leak must have come from the nurse she spoke with at the hospital. Angrily, Lee says that's ridiculous because a mere janitor can't teach a hunter anything. Minju says the guy hasn't even agreed to teach her yet. Yelling, the man asks if this is a joke and what she plans to do now. She simply replies that she'll ask him again. Realizing he won't be able to change her mind, Lee asks her to return in a few weeks, before the mission to finish clearing a large-scale dungeon. Bowing her head, the girl thanks him and leaves the room as requested. Alone, the captain says the organization is really going backward and that no one can find out about this, especially the captain of Team 2. So he needs to talk to the cleaning team, even though just hearing those words makes his stomach turn. Upon being answered, a man introduces himself and asks to speak to the executive director of operations because he has something important to report. A few days after that conversation, we see someone wearing a mask coming to themselves. It's Kim, cleaning a dungeon. Further off, his colleague says he must have finally lost it. We find out the protagonist is happy because one of his skills was unlocked without him doing anything. Park approaches and says he doesn't want to interfere in the guy's personal life, but why is that young woman here with them? Kim simply says he was the one who brought her. Shouting, the man says he knows that. The protagonist explains that since they don't know when Wei Jiang will return, he thought of bringing someone to help. Park reveals his concern is because the girl is a hunter, while the guy thinks taking Minju along wasn't really his choice. Returning to a few moments earlier when the girl was on her knees, begging him to teach her how to fight with a sword, which irritated him. After all, what kind of hunter asks a cleaner for lessons? Even so, Kim said he might consider it if the girl helped out with the cleaning. Hoping that would make her back off, but with a sparkle in her eyes, Minju asked if that was all she needed to do, revealing that the protagonist had been completely wrong about her the whole time, assuming she would have a huge ego just because she was a hunter. Suddenly, our boy realizes he's being stared at by So Yen, who keeps glancing between him and Minju, making things pretty awkward. Placing his hand over his face, the protagonist reveals he didn't expect the girl to actually follow him around everywhere. Suddenly, the huntress yells out, calling him Professor, to tell him that the dirt on one side won't come off. Approaching, the guy asks if she really thought she was going to clean using brute force, since if two types of strawberry juice mix, you can't clean both at the same time. She should start with the human strawberry juice. Picking up another tool, Kim says the other stuff is monster meat, and to clean it, you need a lot of product. It's better to scrape it off with a dagger first to gather everything in one spot, then clean the dagger afterward, since it might end up corroded by the monster strawberry juice. After listening carefully, Minju says she understood. Watching her expression, the protagonist asks if something's wrong and if she doesn't want to do this job. Showing she's not going anywhere anytime soon, the huntress says she was just thinking about how deep cleaning really is. Approaching, Park says it looks like our boy is now a full-fledged cleaner. Suddenly, Kim's eyes widen as he thinks that there's nothing good about this situation for him to be smiling about. He used to be an SS rank hunter, and now he's proud of becoming a complete cleaner. The team leader then says the huntress is doing really well for someone who's never done this before. Watching from a distance, So Yen doesn't seem to like any of it, but still decides not to say anything. Sometime later, we see the girl calling Minju to go with her to another part of the dungeon. Park worries about the number of corpses, but the cleaner says it's the perfect opportunity to work with a hunter, and that both of them will be back soon. The black-haired guy talks to Kim, saying he's sure Minju will win. Without hesitation, our boy says he thinks so too. Meanwhile, So Yeon wonders what she should do now, that she brought the girl there purely on impulse. In her thoughts, she tries to understand why she did something she'd never done before. Suddenly, Minju turns and says the girl looks really tired. Smiling, she says she's fine. Surprising the cleaner, the huntress says she doubts it. So Yeon then reveals that she hasn't been sleeping well these past few days, and before saying why, she says it's better to stop talking about herself and talk more about the huntress, since she's never had the chance to chat with one before. Showing she's just a regular person, the young woman says there's nothing interesting about her except that she followed in her father's footsteps, who was fired due to a shoulder injury after his superiors said people shouldn't fake illness and should just do their job properly. So afraid of what others would think and of becoming a burden, he endured the pain and kept working. So Gyeon says it's unbelievable that the man's coworkers just accepted that and did nothing. But Minju says there are no coworkers in the association, just people ranked above or below you. And since her father was a middle-aged B-rank hunter, nobody cared enough, which turned him into a replaceable tool. The girl goes on to say that the entire association is like that, a place where hierarchy is everything, and that it's the same with the hunters she works with, except in the cleaning team. After all that, the two young women fall silent. Suddenly, Minju asks if her colleague is interested in Kim. Blushing, the girl asks if it's that obvious. Smiling, the huntress confirms and says anyone can see it, making So-yeon even more embarrassed, as she says the guy is good at his job and has a strong sense of responsibility, even though he didn't do anything on the first day, and that he knows the dungeons and the monsters like the back of his hand, being more accurate than the information provided by the control team. Thinking about it, the huntress concludes that the protagonist is definitely not a regular cleaner, because he knows so much, which is more than enough reason not to let him slip away. Looking at So-yeon, Minju tells her not to worry because she's not interested in the guy like that. She only follows him around everywhere because she's so used to the association structure. That's why she needs to get stronger, and for that, she needs Kim's help. With wide eyes, the cleaner asks if the girl is saying that she's not the guy's ex-girlfriend. Sometime later, the trio of cleaners notices the girls returning, and that apparently the two became really close out of nowhere. Park then reminds everyone that, as mentioned before, the boss here is a monster with deadly poison, so everyone must be extremely careful not to let the substance touch their skin. Suddenly, the man asks why So-yeon seems slower than usual. The young woman replies that her uniform is uncomfortable and the gas mask is making it hard to breathe, but it won't interfere with her work. The black-haired guy then asks if it isn't time they replace their equipment. Park says he's already tried to request it, but the association just keeps saying there's no money. Turning toward the door, the man says it's better to stop chatting and go in with what they have. Inside, the group comes face to face with what used to be the boss, but is now just a disgusting green slime. Thinking to himself, Kim says that this boss is called Giant Slime, which looks like just a regular slime. But if someone is exposed to its poison for more than 5 minutes, they're done for. And since this dungeon is large, it means nothing can go wrong. After some time cleaning, the team leader asks if Kim and Sang are okay. Both say yes. Minju also says she's fine, but So-yeon doesn't respond. When Park approaches and touches the girl, she suddenly collapses, showing that the very thing Kim didn't want to happen has happened. Everyone panics when they see their teammate down. Picking her up in his arms, the man begs her to wake up and say what's wrong. Screaming, Sang says she doesn't look good at all, and that her air purifier is probably broken, given the tear in her protective suit. Blaming himself, the protagonist says he should have told her to be more careful, because now it's too late. There's no way the support team can get there within 5 minutes to apply the antidote. We learn that when someone is poisoned by a giant slime, they feel unbearable pain all over their body before the worst happens. Without moving, the protagonist calls out to Minju, who responds immediately. He then asks her to grab her sword, which terrifies the swordswoman. Furious, the team leader and the black-haired guy ask what his problem is, and that if something happens to So-yeon, they won't just stand by. But the protagonist insists that the hunter hurry. Sometime later, we see him telling Min-ju that it's not difficult. She just needs to make a quick cut, but not on the poisoned girl, on him. Completely confused, Park begs the guy to obey him, saying the girl is in terrible shape. Even without knowing the reason behind the request, the swordswoman decides to do what the protagonist asked. She then extends her right arm to summon her weapon, causing a bright blue light to radiate through the whole area. At the same time, her ability is activated. With wide eyes, Kim says he didn't ask her to use any ability. But it's already too late. The huntress quickly approaches and strikes him, while our boy silently prays that his plan will work. A message appears saying a targeted attack on the user has been detected, and that combat mode will now activate. Even in great pain, the protagonist says he'll go ahead to bring So-yeon to the support team and meet the others afterward. Shouting, Park asks what he's talking about. Going from there to the support team would take 30 minutes by car. Suddenly, amid flashes of light, the protagonist and the young woman simply vanish. Through the door, we see Kim running with So-yeon on his back, all thanks to his hyper-boost ability. In his thoughts, the protagonist says he has to hurry. Only 3 minutes left. We return to the Hospital of the Republic, where Park, with tears in his eyes, says thank you to the doctor, who says it was extremely dangerous and that they were lucky to arrive just in time. Looking at the protagonist, the man asks if he is. Without letting him answer, the guy introduces himself. So the doctor asks that before he leaves, he stop by the front desk to pay for the stitches he received. Next, we see So-yeon smiling at her teammates who don't look very happy. Sagnan says the girl really likes making them worry, while Park says she should have told them something was wrong. Angrily, the black-haired cleaner asks how old their equipment even is. After being scolded by the leader, the guy says he has every right to complain because not changing protective gear for over a year is too much. He then yells, asking if he's saying anything that isn't true. Noticing Minju's presence, Sang says he's not trying to say it's the hunter's fault. Park then tells So-yeon she should take the chance to rest while he takes care of the incident. Out of nowhere, Kim begins leaving the room, and when asked, says he's going to get some fresh air. Thinking as he walks, he says the girl had an accident because of old equipment. Then admits that his plan worked even better than he expected. So now is the perfect time to suggest a budget increase for the cleaning team, since if he pressures the association using this incident, it'll have no choice but to provide support. Back in the room, So-yeon asks what's wrong with Kim. Park says the guy is probably just upset. Worried, the girl says it's all her fault for causing trouble. But her leader says that's not it at all, then reveals that the guy got hurt. And even though he's hot-headed, it's clear he cares about his teammates. Hearing everything, Minju thinks to herself that she really has a lot to learn from the guy who sacrificed his own body just to save someone. Sang then says the more he pays attention to the protagonist, the stranger he seems, since he saved the girl using an ability, something he's never seen a cleaner do. When she finds out Kim saved her, So-yeon regrets not having thanked him. Turning, Park decides to ask the huntress what she thinks of the guy. With a hand on her chin, the young woman says he seems like a good person, and his face is totally her type. A bit embarrassed, the man says he actually meant from a hunter's perspective. Looking him straight in the eye while blushing, the girl says now she gets it. The team leader then says it's a waste of talent for Kim to be just a cleaner, considering how many techniques he knows. Minju asks if the man is wondering whether the guy has a chance to transfer to the operations team. Park confirms, and the young woman says the guy is definitely far ahead of most hunters in terms of experience and knowledge. But the problem is that the protagonist is part of the cleaning team. Hearing that makes Sang irritated, but the huntress says she's not trying to say Kim can't move up in life. In fact, it's the opposite, because she, as a B-rank hunter, can't even measure the guy's true skill level, yet he still chose to be a cleaner. Surprised, Park asks if Minju is saying the guy chose that job. She says yes, since she can't think of any other reason. The man then asks why Kim would do that. Taking a guess, the huntress says he probably has amazing skills but doesn't want to get involved in the hierarchy of the association or the hunters, so he shows the camaraderie of the cleaning team instead. Park then says that if that's the case, he won't bring up the department transfer again. Ruining the mood, Sang says that if the guy cares so much about his teammates, then he must have gone to the association to complain about the accident, which makes Minju worried. Meanwhile, there's the protagonist, standing in front of Si-min Shuk, the director of the Seoul branch of the Supernatural Dimension Management Association. The man asks who the guy is, and he replies that he's a cleaner. Si-min then asks if the young man is really requesting a salary increase for the cleaning team. Upon hearing a yes, the man starts tapping his fingers on the table, then folds both hands near his face. We learn that this man is the top figure at the Seoul branch, after his group merged with the association through connections. Coldly, the man says the guy should have gone to the administration department to deal with that matter. Kim then asks who would be the hunter going out to kill the monsters one by one instead of just taking down the boss and ending the fight. Si-min then questions if he's a hunter, but the young man replies again that he's a janitor. Annoyed, the man asks how a janitor dares to come asking for a budget increase without even being a team captain. He then states that the cleaning team doesn't even have enough expenses to justify that much money. The protagonist then says he's asking for a raise because the current salary doesn't even cover the relatively low costs. Laughing, the director says the young man really has the guts to talk to him like that. Kim then reveals that an accident happened because they were forced to work with old equipment. Surprised, the man says he hasn't received any report, and the protagonist replies that it's because it just happened. In his thoughts, Seaman wonders why the young man has so much confidence to act so rudely. Big and unafraid, Kim says he knows the man wants to save money at the cleaning team's expense, but accidents shouldn't happen. However, the director says that in reality, the association doesn't have money, something he'd know if he'd been around longer. Smiling, the protagonist says he knows they must have secured a large budget for the year, in the billions, where 70% went to the operations team. Stammering, the man asks how he knows that. Without answering, our boy says he knows the association won't use all the money and should give it to those who need it. Mouth agape, Seaman asks who the young man really is. With a smirk, the protagonist says for the third time that he's just a janitor, and that as the branch director, the man should consider his own position, since it's only been 2 months since he got promoted. Given how poorly the cleaning team is already treated, it would be bad if citizens found out about the accident. Irritated, the director asks if that's a threat, but the young man says he's just stating the facts. Cornered, Seaman says he understands the situation, then asks how much of an increase Kim wants, and our boy says the director can choose, since only a budget increase is mentioned as the condition to unlock the ability. Turning his back, the protagonist says he's leaving now, but the man asks him to wait, because he wants to know if he knows the hunter Minju. Intrigued, the protagonist asks why. Smiling, Seaman says that apparently that's a yes, and in that case he'll review the raise and get back to him later. Kim says that's fine while wondering what that was all about. As soon as the young man leaves, the director decides to make a call, showing he didn't believe the janitor's story. When the other person answers, he says the guy the man talked about earlier just left his office, and that he's definitely the one training Minju and must be connected to the association somehow. Given the amount of information he knows, the director also reveals that the young man asked for a budget increase. At a restaurant, Lee Soo says that either way, Kim is part of the cleaning team for now, and that he was thinking of teaching them a lesson about the need to bow to their superiors. The next day, we see what appears to be a portal leading to a dungeon. With a paper in hand, Park asks what that is, revealing it's a disciplinary action notice. Furious, Sang says not even compensation would be enough, let alone a disciplinary notice. The team leader then says So Yeon was punished due to fatigue from multiple jobs, which ended up causing the accident, resulting in denial of the compensation request, since there's no evidence the accident happened due to old equipment. Irritated, Kim wonders if that's really how Seaman is going to handle things. Smiling, So Yeon asks the young man not to worry because she's fine. Because even though it's a disciplinary action, it's just a notice, and she didn't expect to get anything anyway. In his thoughts, the protagonist wonders what she's talking about. He's just mad he didn't unlock his ability. Approaching, Sang says even so, he sees the young man differently now, because he heard Kim was very brave and went to speak to the director face to face. Very confused, Kim again wonders in his mind what these people think of him. But the group starts to walk away as Park says they need to think about the young man's good heart and work hard. Before following them, our boy tries to understand why the higher-ups decided to go to such extremes. Suddenly, Minju interrupts his thoughts by asking if all of this is her fault, since when she asked for vacation, she told the captain about the cleaning team. And because he's older, he must have seen it negatively and decided to teach her a lesson. With wide eyes, the protagonist asks what the name of the young woman's captain is. Intrigued, the hunter says the man is the first captain of the control team and his name is Lee Soo-yeon. We find out that Lee achieved that position through connections and without any talent. With a small grin, the protagonist says he knows the man and that this was to be expected. Picking up the pace, he calls Park's attention to inform him that he'll be using his day off. We're taken to Samseong Station, where a couple is walking down the street on their way to find a place to eat. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, and a dungeon appears right in the middle of the city to the despair of everyone nearby. Face to face with the portal, Kim smiles and says it's been a while since the last time. Next, we see a monster that looks furious, alongside several other creatures surrounding the protagonist. With a tool in hand, the young man initiates his skill activation, which drastically increases his movement speed during battle. Then he charges into the fight. Sometime later, we realize the boy defeated all the monsters alone, thus performing a dungeon interception, a type of secret job done by freelance hunters. Before the association can send a team, the protagonist observes the destruction and notes that he truly can't control his strength. But even so, he'll give the place a shot since he's able to finish the job in under 15 minutes. The problem is that Kim forgets he's no longer the world's #1 and can now be dragged around with a single hit. The only reason he can still clear a dungeon is because he's already been in that place before. Fearless, the protagonist charges at the 4th boss, using all the power and skill at his disposal. Alongside his weapon, which is actually just a simple shovel, he throws the tool near the giant robot's wrist, and several bolts of lightning begin to spark. With that, the protagonist triggers another skill activation that boosts his damage by 3000% when attacking weak points. To defend itself, the monster launches a powerful counterattack, but our boy is faster. Suddenly, there's a massive explosion, with With another victory, we learn this is the 4th dungeon Kim has cleared in a single day. And since an operations team hunter clears this amount in a week, he's doing pretty well. Upon leaving the place, he overhears 2 guys commenting that the association lost 4 dungeons to an unknown individual. So now they'll have to stand guard. Noticing the protagonist, the men say he won't get away once he's caught, since doing this can result in either dismissal or a fine if the person is lucky enough to escape. After finishing another dungeon, Kim says he loved to see the hunter's shocked expressions. But after 2 days off, he realizes the one with the shocked face is himself. When he returns to work and comes face to face with Lee Soo. Approaching, Park asks what the man is doing there. He replies that it's a field trip, since it's sometimes necessary to interact with other teams to build camaraderie. Then states that no one there should worry about his presence and should just work as usual. In his thoughts, the protagonist says that visit can only mean the man suspects he's behind the interceptions. Trying to ease the tension, the team leader says that in that case, he'll go get protective gear for Lee, who replies that there's no need since he'll keep his distance. Sometime later, we see that cleaning will take longer than expected. Kim agrees with Sang and says he'll be fine, then asks Minju to bring more supplies and another mop. Park asks So Yeon about the gas level, and the young woman says it's at 150 micrograms per square meter, which means the creatures are decomposing very quickly. The protagonist asks Sang for help, who says he'll need to mop again. Clearly annoyed, Lee thinks to himself that the team is just pretending to be busy because he's there. So he decides to toss bait and calls out to Minju to ask if there's been any interception in the past 2 days. In a panic, Kim thinks that since the young woman believes she's a hunter, she might connect the dots, just like everyone else. Without stopping his cleaning, our boy wonders if the man is trying to read the room, which is not good at all. Minju shows she doesn't know anything and says that in that case, the buzz among the hunters must be huge. Lee says it's more or less, but the association is keeping an eye on the suspect, and the person who catches the interceptor will receive a major reward. If it's a hunter, they'll get bonus points in the rank evaluation. And if another team catches them, there will be a personnel transfer, which means that if the cleaning team catches the interceptor, they could move to another team. So if anyone has been missing over the past 2 days and they know them, they must report it immediately. Still crouched, Kim thinks it's over now. But that's how it is, he'll see who wins faster, even knowing Lee isn't stupid despite lacking talent. Suddenly, Park calls out to the protagonist to ask if he's okay, since he got hurt the day before. Even though Park told him to be careful while dismantling monsters, So Yeon catches on to the plan and plays along, as does Sang, who says he knew this would happen the moment the young man started singing while working. Turning to Lee, Park says that unfortunately, none of them know anyone suspicious. Agreeing and playing dumb, Sang says it's truly a shame, because they love to switch teams. But if they discover anything, they'll report it immediately. Confused, Lee wonders if these people have lost their minds over cleaning, while Minju watches everything from afar with a smile on her face. We cut to the association building, where Lee is yelling on the phone with the director, claiming he's sure the janitor is the one behind the interception. However, Si-min says they should simply increase the cleaning team's budget. This enrages the operations team captain, whose biggest goal was to ruin the young man. Staying composed, the director says they've messed with the wrong person, because the janitor isn't normal. When he starts to say what Kim's real deal is, all we see is Lee in complete shock. Meanwhile, somewhere else, we see a child telling their mother that the man behind them is covered in strawberry juice. Hearing nothing, the protagonist is smiling, satisfied that he got the budget he needed through the interceptions. We return to the conversation between Lee and the director, who says the association received a donation to the support fund. In the name of the cleaning team, furious, the captain says that only proves the janitor is responsible. But Si-min asks if he seriously thinks that makes sense, since someone with abilities wouldn't choose to stay in the cleaning team. At least that's not something he would do. Stammering, the captain agrees. The director then says there are more strange things, like how the young man came directly to him and knew everything about the association. And that only shows there's something in the cleaning team that shouldn't be there. On the other end of the line, Lee says he understands everything now, while Si-min states that without a doubt the young man is someone inside the association, connected to someone powerful, like the president, for example, who also doesn't like him very much. Grinding his teeth, the captain concludes that's why everyone on the cleaning team covered for Kim, since they surely know the boy is linked to the president. On the other end, Si-min says it's better to do the job properly, since they can't predict what will happen to the man if he falls. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Park says everyone did a good job, and we learn that apparently they handled the interception case. All that's left is for the support fund deposit to be reflected in the budget. Suddenly, something catches the protagonist's attention. It's a pile of boxes and no one knows why they were delivered. Upon opening them, Sang and So Yeon find new protective suits and gas masks, as well as gloves and supplies. Confused, Park wonders if headquarters sent all that. Kim thinks that apparently his plan worked and that the official letter probably says the support package was sent by an anonymous benefactor. However, the team leader reveals that the budget increase was 200 million, not 20, which is what Kim deposited. With the letter in hand, our boy wonders why they sent 10 times more than his deposit. Sang grabs the letter and begins to read. revealing that the association concluded the equipment deterioration caused the accident, and that because of this, a salary increase has been provided even if it's small. Hearing that leaves everyone speechless. But to make things better, the letter also states that So Yeon will receive 100 million won as compensation for a work accident. Crying, the girl looks at Kim and says that it's impossible, but the young man insists he wasn't the one responsible. Smiling, Park says he's never seen the association reverse a decision in all the time he's worked as a janitor. The protagonist then asks if the man doesn't find that strange, but he denies it, saying it's all explained in the letter. Perplexed, our boy asks if that means they don't need to know who did it. Everyone smiles and says that's exactly it. The team leader adds that they need to carry all the boxes to the office, a place Kim didn't even know existed. Curious, Minju asks where the office is, because she'll help the protagonist carry everything so they can go home. Park disagrees and says they'll all carry things together. The girl says it's fine and asks the young man what he thinks. Annoyed, the protagonist asks if he can't say no and just leave. Shortly after, a message appears saying that the skill Hellfire has been unlocked due to the budget increase. Smiling, our boy says that if things keep going like this, he'll be able to leave the cleaning team soon. Suddenly, the hunter appears and asks if he was the one who made the interceptions over the last 2 days. Staring at the girl, the protagonist asks what she'll do if he says yes. The young woman then tells him not to worry, because she won't do anything, then asks if he's also the one responsible for the cleaning team's support fund. Saying that just like her, the others must also know but chose not to say anything so they wouldn't put him in an awkward spot. Minju then asks if Kim has ever heard the saying that no matter how much a talented person tries to hide their abilities, it will always be visible to others, and that even if he tries, he won't be able to hide, which means sooner or later, he'll end up drawing the attention of the association, which won't allow him to stay in the cleaning team. Hearing this makes the young man really happy. In his thoughts, the protagonist says he never imagined he'd be helped by Minju, but that now he can finally leave that job. However, the girl drops a box on the ground, then says she knows he wants to stay on the cleaning team, showing Kim that getting out of the team won't be so easy. Yelling, the hunter says she'll help him stay in that job forever. Once she finally becomes a hunter. Furious, the protagonist wonders if that's some kind of joke. We find out that after the interception case, another incident took place, catching our team by surprise. Looking at one of the walls, everyone realizes that someone, or a group, hates them, given the graffiti and mess left behind in the place. Not only that, the insults were written using monster strawberry juice, and the bodies were scattered all over the warehouse. Terrified, So-yeon says this is too much, while Sang says he and Kim will go after whoever's responsible. But our boy says that won't help, and it's better to just move on. Because if no one reacts, the attacks will stop, while thinking that the ones who did it were definitely the operations team hunters, and that even though he wants to go after them, he needs to avoid conflict to unlock his skills. However, it kept happening for 3 days in a row, wiping the floor with a cloth. So-yeon tearfully asks why they're doing this, while Sang repeats that it's just not right. Park says he already tried talking to the operations team, but the captain is on a trip, and the others just denied everything. The young man then says Minju might be able to do something and decides to grab his phone. But Kim appears with a terrifying expression, saying the boy won't talk to anyone because he's the one who'll handle it, and that in the meantime, no one is to clean anything else. Smiling like a psychopath, the boy says that thanks to this, the hunters have pissed them off enough to activate a passive skill, then decides to go straight to the association building. Inside, we see a woman welcoming several people to the Seoul branch headquarters, until the young man bursts in, knocking down 2 guys with his arms as they shout for him to get out of the way. A guy yells and asks who that piece of crap is that dared to hit a hunter. Meanwhile, Kim can only think about what happened 3 days ago. We're taken back to when everything started, right in front of a dungeon portal, where 2 hunters shoved past Sang and the others, complaining about the stench and about the team not knowing their place, saying they mess with another team's budget, instead of just cleaning and staying quiet and ashamed about it. Furious, the black-haired cleaner curses at the guys, until suddenly Minju appears and asks what team the guys are from. Annoyed, the hunters ask who she thinks she is to talk to them like that. Showing she's not some little girl, the hunter says she asked a question and would like an answer. Shouting, one of the guys asks if she even understands if they told her what team they're from, but the other hunter says she's part of their team. Without hesitation, the dude bows to the hunter and apologizes for not recognizing her. Minju then asks why they're so sorry, since she didn't even know they were on her team, and that before apologizing for that, they should apologize for acting like animals. Walking away from the duo, the girl asks Sang and So-yeon if they're okay. Both say yes. The hunter then says there are always people who think they become something just because they became hunters, even if they're only rank E. Park shows up smiling, saying they should start working soon. However, Minju says she only came to greet the team, then says she learned a lot during her time there and bows. The team leader says they're all very thankful for the help she gave. Smiling, the girl says that actually, she's the one who should be grateful for meeting such amazing people. So Yun can't hold back and starts crying, then asks the young woman to come by from time to time to visit them, showing they really grew close. Watching the farewell, Kim reveals he was the only one who wasn't sad, because he was the one who asked Minju to leave. We go back to the moment when the young man told the hunter, who was quite shocked but quickly understood it meant he was going to train her. After that, the protagonist, using all his knowledge and experience, created a dungeon attack schedule, so the young woman could reach rank within half a year. And since his current self can't build a career like in his past life, he plans to turn Minju into the best hunter and use her as a tool to negotiate with the association, revealing that even given a second chance at life, his mindset hasn't changed. After writing down all the instructions, the hunter calls out to the young man, who asks what it is. With a wide smile, Minju says she just wanted to thank him for everything, and that even if it never happens, she wants to make it clear that if he ever needs help, he can call her anytime. We find out that it was after the girl left that the attack happened. Back at the association building, two hunters are sitting and laughing at Park, who went there to ask for someone to look after the cleaning team. One of the guys asks how such an insignificant team dares to keep an eye on the hunter team's budget, people they can't even dream of competing with. Suddenly, Kim appears and punches the young man, who falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes, while the other asks who the protagonist is. Without answering, our boy decides to hit first and talk later. But the young hunter activates his skill and shouts how a janitor dares do that to someone who has necromancer powers. The massive skeleton lunges at Kim with its huge scythe, but the young man dodges the blow. Enraged, the hunter activates his skill called Death Strike, clearly determined to win. Yelling, he says this is the end for Kim, and that he'll make sure he never messes with a hunter again. Punching both the hunter and the skeleton in the face at once, Kim asks how he dared use a skill on him. With both of them on the ground, he questions if it was fun acting like middle schoolers and laughing behind his team's back, not to mention using skills outside a dungeon against regular people. When he's interrupted, the protagonist raises his hand again and asks how the hunter dares do that, then says the guy's way too cowardly to be a hunter. Crouching down, Kim also says that from that day on, he won't clean any dungeon cleared by that guy's team, and that he'll expose everything they did to the media. The protagonist's handprint still on his face, the hunter says the association won't let this slide. With a dark expression, our boy asks if he really thinks the organization would cover it all up for a measly ranky hunter, then adds that if he wants to keep his job, he'd better go find the cleaning team and apologize on his knees, unless he'd prefer to face him inside a dungeon. Suddenly, Lee appears and asks what's going on there, surprising the three young men, who immediately turn their attention to him. Mouth agape, Kim wonders why the captain is there instead of on a trip, like they told Park. Smiling, the man asks what Mr. Janitor is doing there, and if the budget that was sent the other day wasn't enough. Pointing at the hunters, the protagonist says both of them have been causing trouble in the dungeons, like writing insults on walls and throwing monster corpses around. One of the guys stands up and says it's all lies, but he gets slapped by the captain for calling the protagonist lazy. Smiling, the man approaches Kim and says he'll apologize on behalf of the hunter. Even though he doesn't understand any of it, our boy asks Lee to please be more careful in the future, leaving the room right after as the captain tells him to take care. Glancing sideways, the protagonist adds that it would also be nice if those guys never showed up in front of him again, bringing an end to all that mess, even though the captain's sudden change in attitude keeps haunting the young man's mind. When he mentions it to Minju, she says she doesn't recall anything in particular. The protagonist then says the guys really did apologize and he's sure it won't happen again. The hunter replies that even if they wanted to do something, they can't anymore, because they were recently fired. Eyes wide, Kim clearly wasn't expecting that, and starts wondering once again why Lee was so friendly that day. To make things worse, the next day, the cleaning team finds a group of hunters in front of a dungeon bowing and thanking them for their hard work. Even though confused, the protagonist says they all did a good job too. We find out this kind of behavior continued for several days. The hunters even left the dungeons organized. Intrigued and happy, Subyan says she's still not used to it, while Park says they've finally been recognized. Sang then asks if that means they're cooler than the hunters, but the team leader tells him not to be so arrogant. The young woman approaches Kim and says she's happy he's with them, but that she's still worried. In his thoughts, our boy wonders what she means by him being with a team. So Yeon then says that the young man might end up getting in trouble because of them, since everyone's watching. Remembering what he did to the two hunters, the protagonist says it's fine if someone's angry with him. Smiling again, the girl agrees. After all, it's not like he did anything wrong. Sang jumps into the conversation and says he still doesn't get it, since the young man asked the director for a raise, stood up to the hunters, and now Team 1 from operations is keeping an eye on them, as if Kim were someone really important, someone even the higher-ups can't touch. The statement catches the protagonist off guard. Still, he just laughs, then asks them to stop fooling around and get back to work, while thinking there's no way his teammate is right. We return to Lee, who doesn't seem well at all. In his office, someone asks if it's true he's keeping an eye on the cleaning team, and that Team 1 from operations was placed to monitor them, We discover the mocking voice belongs to Lim Dong-bin, captain of Team 2. Yelling, the man seated says Lim doesn't know anything and should just stay quiet. Climbing on the desk, Lim asks if the president is aware of the situation, then says that if Lee worked like he did, he wouldn't need to worry about this kind of thing. Furious, the captain of Team 1 says that if he's done, he can leave. But the chubby guy says he'll take care of everything, and that he'll play the boss's role for him, to get rid of the janitor who's been a pain in the neck. With a cookie in his mouth handed to him by Lim, the man asks what exactly he's going to do. With a wicked expression, the captain says he'll simply do what needs to be done, because not even the president can cover up a mistake like this. Revealing that he's going to set something up to blame the cleaning team, staring at Lim, Lee wonders in his thoughts what will happen to the group, while Lim gives an evil grin. Turning around, the chubby guy asks if his colleague really wants to take care of the cleaning team for the rest of his life. Hearing that ends up convincing the captain of Team 1, who then asks what the plan is. Lim says it won't be hard at all, since the captain's team has a big job coming up the following week, with the multi-layered dungeon in Yangdongpo, which opens only after defeating the boss of the first level. We find out that even though it's ranked as a normal dungeon, the difficulty rises because no one can leave until all bosses are defeated. It requires 1 month of preparation. After explaining the plan, the captain of Team 2 says he'll handle the rest. But Lee yells and asks if that isn't going too far even for him. Unbothered, Lim says the director already gave permission, so they'll talk later. Leaving Team 1's captain even more frustrated, since Lim is the kind of guy who steals others' work and takes all the credit. Thinking it over, Lee says that if the man takes care of the cleaning team, that'll be one less problem for him. That agrees to join in as long as it's kept secret and nothing comes back to bite him. Laughing, Lim says he also heard about a rising girl from Lee's team, someone named Min-ju. Smiling, the captain asks his colleague to hand the hunter over to his team, while Lee wonders where the man even heard about that. Sitting back down, he tells the Team 2 captain to go talk to the girl directly. After their conversation, we see the city's streets. Sitting on a bus bench, Kim is smiling as he reads something on his panel, revealing that unlocking his skills just got easier. Then he thinks there must be a reason why no one else has joined the cleaning team. While he checks the missions he still needs to complete, he chooses one that tells him to increase public interest in the cleaning team. Suddenly, he gets a call from Min-ju and asks if something happened. The girl says she was chosen as the mission leader to clear a multi-layered dungeon. Kim then says that means her value as a hunter is rising. But the hunter says she called because she heard that the cleaning team will be part of the operation. We return to the association building, where hunters are complaining about a pay cut, all thanks to the cleaning team. And that even so, they can't lay a finger on anyone. One of the guys then tells the others to keep their voices down, since the group is right there, so Yeon then asks Park if he's really okay, and though shaking, he says yes. Laughing, one hunter says that even dogs like them know when to sit down and listen. Curious, the protagonist asks why they didn't call Team 1 to handle that dungeon alongside them. Minju says that Lee passed the project to Team 2. Surprised, Kim asks why he would do that, but the girl says she doesn't know. Suddenly, Lim bursts through the doors. Smiling, the man asks how everyone is doing, then announces that they'll be handling the Yangdongpo operation. Mouth wide open and eyes staring, our boy shows he can't believe that guy is the leader of Team 2. We learn that this man is responsible for stealing several of Kim's past jobs and is infamous for it. Seeing him tremble, Minju and So Yeon ask what's going on. Our boy tells the hunter to stay away from Lim because he's human garbage. Up front, the man says the operation will last 24 hours and no one can leave without defeating all bosses. So if anyone who doesn't want to participate, they should speak up now. Since no one says anything, the captain says they can now go over the operation plan, which involves dividing the hunters into 3 groups to speed up combat time. Because if they take too long, the monsters will begin to release more toxic gas, which the cleaning team will have to eliminate since they'll also be there. And since it's a big operation, he'll be offering a bonus for the hard work. Park says it's all good and that they'll join in. In his thoughts, Kim says there's no reason to refuse. After all, it's a great opportunity to work with the operations team, which could allow him to unlock another skill. And since he's part of the cleaning team, if he doesn't take this chance now, he might not get another. Even with all those thoughts, the protagonist says out loud that he can't do it, catching Lim completely off guard, who doesn't even realize he has an enemy right in front of him. After the meeting, the rest of the cleaning team tries to figure out why the protagonist refused to participate. Park then says maybe Kim is worried about them. Minju reveals that she's also worried since the operation will be very difficult due to the number of dangerous monsters. With tears in his eyes, the team leader says that in that case, they should follow the young man and refuse too. Without hesitation, the others agree, getting emotional at such kindness. Laughing, Park says the boy truly has a good heart and that the final decision is made. Catching everyone by surprise, the hunter says she'll back out too. So Yeon says she can't do that since she's the mission leader, but Minju says she didn't even like the idea to begin with. Besides, she can't betray her teacher. In moments like these, it's best to follow the master's teachings. The cleaning team leader says she's absolutely right. Later, still inside the association building, we see Lee smiling with a crazy look on his face. thinking about how funny Lim's reaction must have been when the cleaning team refused to participate. Walking into Lim's office, the captain of Team 1 says he warned him he messed with the wrong person. Looking irritated, the other captain tells him to leave if he's done mocking him. Getting closer, Lee asks if it's true that Team 2 failed and that even Minju turned him down, and if now he's going to beg for help from a freelance hunter, which will cost at least 200 million won. Furious, Lim slams his hand on the table and says that's enough, then reveals that he'll use the director's authority to open a mandatory participation list. We find out those lists are used in emergency situations, and anyone who doesn't comply can even be expelled. With mirrored eyes, the captain of Team 2 asks how those clueless amateurs dared to provoke him. A few days later, word reaches the cleaning team and they find out their names are on the list. The day of the operation arrives, drawing a lot of media attention. Sang asks if they'll have to give interviews, while Park says he should have shaved and So Yeon says she should have washed her hair. Kim walks up to Minju and asks if she's scared, based on the look on her face, when in fact she should look more confident, since when hunters get nervous, so do the citizens. Sweating nervously, the girl says everything will be fine. She's better in action. The protagonist then tells her to focus on clearing the dungeon instead of worrying about the cleaning team. The hunter says she understands, but that he should still keep the radio on. Our boy asks if she's going to keep calling him for help, but the girl doesn't reply and just stares at him as if saying yes. With no way out, the protagonist says that if she starts to feel like dying, she should let him know. Park yells that it's time to check if everything's ready and if they packed everything. So Yeon says they have hydrogen peroxide, diluted hydrochloric acid, 10 liters of saline, plus a vacuum compressor, EVA foam packets, and plenty of food and water. Satisfied, the team leader says that even though it's a tough operation, they should work like it's just another day. Two hunters notice the team's moment of motivation and start laughing. Lim finally arrives and says it's wonderful that the beloved cleaning team and the operation leader Minju have arrived. He then wishes them good luck. Politely, the girl says she wishes them luck too. Stohima asks why the hunter is participating if she's the leader. Kim says it's not common, but it happens when a hunter is considered good enough. In his thoughts, the protagonist admits the girl does have the qualifications, but there's another reason Lim wants her in there. It's that the man doesn't know how to do anything except sit back and take the credit later. Lying, Lim claims he'll look after everyone, and if anything happens, they can just tell him. With her head down, Minju says she understands. Looking back, the man says the cleaning team should be careful too, and not slow the hunters down. Even angry, Kim says they'll do their best, while thinking to himself that he wants to see how long the man will keep this up. After the round of announcements, Lim says the hunter can now give the instructions. Standing in the middle of the group, Minju says that, as everyone knows, they'll be divided into teams A, B, and C. Team A will go in first, Team B second, and Team C third, advancing always in the same direction over and over again, without worrying too much about the cleaning team who already know how a dungeon works. So, if anything happens, they should just ask a member for help. Hearing that leaves the hunters stunned, as well as Kim, who wonders in his thoughts why Minju said that. Lim says the girl must be so nervous that she confused the cleaning team with the operations team. The young woman doesn't agree with him and simply says they need to double-check everything. Sometime later, we see everyone entering the site to begin cleaning the dungeon. A while after that, we see our beloved team in action, cleaning up all the mess and filth left behind by the hunters. So Yeon says she was a little scared at first, but now it all looks pretty easy. Sang then says he wishes he could see the hunters in action, saying it doesn't make sense for them to be kept away. Laughing, Park says that now that they've finished dissecting the monsters, they can start cleaning the rest. Since the gas can't be allowed to spread until the hunters finish the dungeon, the monster parts need to be bagged. We learn that normally the team burns the monster corpses, but for this operation, that won't be possible. So they'll place the monster pieces in vacuum bags filled with the chemical substance to help with decomposition. While working, Sang says it's super disgusting to do it like this, then asks when they'll have a snack. Park replies that it hasn't even been that long since they got in. Suddenly, Sudian shows up holding chocolate bars, asking who's hungry. Walking up to Kim, she asks if he wants one too, until she remembers he doesn't like to be interrupted while working. To her surprise, our boy says he wants a strawberry-flavored one. He eats right away while the young woman looks at him like he's a bunny eating a carrot. Smiling, Park says he feels much better now. In his thoughts, the protagonist says this is the team's first real mission, but since they're doing what they always do, they just have to act normal. And so 8 hours later, we find out that the hunters had it easy. The cleaning team had a different experience. After 10 hours inside, they started getting tired. After 15 hours, Sang fell asleep and hurt his hand, and one of the meat bags exploded, leaving the protagonist even more exhausted while trying to fix it. After 18 hours, the operations team calls them on the radio to say the gas seems to have increased. Park apologizes and says they fell behind because of the workload. They're still in Zone 5. The voice on the other end says they're way too slow. The hunters are already in Zone 10. And upon hearing they're planning a break, the hunter on the radio gets furious. Kevin grabs the radio and says everyone is extremely tired. They simply can't move forward right now. The hunter says a break in the operation isn't possible, and the protagonist asks how they expect the team to continue if everyone is exhausted. Coldly, the hunter says that's the cleaning team's problem, and they should deal with it. Boldly, Kim tells him to send some of the idle hunters to help out. But the young man refuses and asks if they look like janitors. Furious, our boy curses at him and demands to speak with the boss immediately. Lim arrives quickly and asks why they aren't handling everything themselves if they claim they could, and why Kim is even standing there instead of cleaning. The protagonist then asks where Minju is. The man doesn't answer and instead asks why he wants to know. Our boy says his team has been working for 18 hours straight and they're not machines. But Lim doesn't care and asks if the boy is saying he doesn't want to do his job anymore. Then shouts that apparently there's a weakling around who thinks he has the right to delay an operation that hunters worked for weeks to prepare for. Being cruel, the captain declares that the team will no longer receive their bonus for neglecting their duties and failing to follow instructions. Things he absolutely cannot let slide, because he is the one responsible for the cleaning team's actions. Kim can't hold back and bursts out laughing, saying he knew something was off when the man made the participation list, just to place them there and hand out several punishments, which makes him a total bastard. He doesn't even know how the cleaning team works and isn't even the leader of that operation. Hearing this makes Lim furious, but our guy asks what he plans to do if his team walks out and the gas spreads. Suddenly, the captain grabs the radio and introduces himself, then asks if Minju is busy. Elsewhere, we see the young woman face to face with a fierce monster and she says she kind of is. Still, the man informs her that the cleaning team has abandoned the operation. Everyone will soon suffocate from the gas, which forces him to take command. Not understanding, the huntress asks why. Cursing the young woman, Lim says that this isn't an operation someone like her should be leading. Suddenly, Minju hears Kim's voice and asks if that's true. Our guy then says that even if she can't do anything, he'd like to know if she wants to die there. Hearing it leaves Minju frozen. Furiously, Lim asks what she's doing that she hasn't passed leadership to him yet, and says there's no way she thinks she can boss around the one who put her in charge. With no way out, Minju says she understands and will hand over the leadership to the janitor Kim, who will lead the operation from that moment on. With a dark look, the protagonist can only smile. While everyone else doesn't know where to look, raising his hand, the protagonist asks if they're ready to see a real leader in action. After a brief moment of silence, Lim can't hold back and bursts out laughing, saying the guy will only be a leader if it's of the janitors, since it's obvious there was a misunderstanding and that he will be the leader. Mocking him, our guy asks if trash like that man is capable of leading anything. Smiling, the captain questions whether the young man is even a hunter to be this confident. Annoyed, our guy says that doesn't matter, but Lim says it does. This is life or death. Kim asks if the man means he should hand leadership over to him instead of trying even without experience. The man confirms and says he'll let the cleaning team go with just a disciplinary action. The boy then says that, in fact, it does depend on him. But when he looks at that fat face, he remembers the past, and that makes him feel like a piece of shit, even though he's improved more each day since he came back. Confused, the captain asks what that's supposed to mean. With great fury, the protagonist says it means the man is out of the operation. We find out this is a top-level disciplinary action that strips the individual of participating or gaining any benefits during the subjugation. Getting closer, Kim tells Lim to shut his mouth before a fly gets in and asks if it's his first time receiving an action like that. He then picks up the radio and introduces himself, to declare that from that moment on, leader Lim Dong-bin is out of the operation, and that everyone there must give their best and follow his instructions since Huntress Minju passed the leadership to him. Giving his first order, our guy says that teams B and C will help the cleaning team since they're doing nothing. The men start to complain, saying they didn't become hunters to be out cleaning. The protagonist then announces that from that moment, teams B and C are also out of the operation for lack of cooperation. Calling Team A next, to inform them that due to reduced personnel, everyone will need to put in more effort. Kim then asks if Minju is in Area 11. She confirms and reveals the monster there is very tough. To help, the protagonist says they should focus on forming a lineup with a guardian in front while a healer stays behind. That way, when the bear's immunity ends, it will likely leap at the guardian, tiring itself out. That's when everyone should attack. The huntress says she understands everything and will give it a try, then asks her teammates to follow the plan. The healer says he's buffing the monster while the guardian urges it to come at her. The huge bear starts roaring and leaps at the girl, who uses her power to defend herself. Minju appears at that moment and attacks with her sword, using her counterattack skill, then delivers a massive blow. The monster roars furiously again, putting Minju on high alert. Shortly after, the young woman informs Kim that Area 11 is clear, leaving the hunters from the other teams completely shocked, Smiling, Kim says that from this moment on, they'll take 50 minutes to finish the dungeon. We arrive at Area 12, which has a ghost-type monster making physical attacks ineffective. The next one is hallucinogenic type, meaning the healer must purify everyone. Still inside the dungeon, the hunters ask if the guy wasn't just a janitor, while he's lying comfortably on the ground giving out instructions. Suddenly, Minju says everyone is tired and that she doesn't have enough mana left, which catches the guy off guard. Standing up, he asks the young woman to hang in there and try not to die. We see the huntress attacking with her sword, a creature that looks like it's made of stone, wearing armor and with crystals on its back. Thinking to herself, the young woman says that this monster is very strange and unlike any she's ever defeated before. It's also way too tough, very big, and very fast, trying to leap across the creature's body. Minju realizes she's about to get hit and quickly dodges, or at least tries to. We see the young woman being thrown hard against the ground. Then Kim appears and reaches out to help her. Laughing, the huntress says she's apparently not that strong after all while extending her hand back. The protagonist then says he actually needs her to pass him the sword, leaving the task of helping her up to another hunter. In his thoughts, while staring at the stone giant, our guy says of course there had to be a red-ranked monster there, which is just a bit of a pain to deal with. But since he unlocked the excessive immersion skill, which enhances the effect of any other skill the user activates, things won't be so hard. Our guy charges in with everything he's got, causing rocks to fly everywhere, while keeping a face like it's no big deal. Using the sword, he strikes a weak point on the monster, causing purple goo to ooze out and making the creature scream. Without hesitation, the protagonist lands another fierce blow to finish off that area once and for all. Even so, the monster proves to be truly resilient, forcing Kim to activate his piercing skill. Along with excessive immersion and counterattack, an explosion erupts and flames engulf the creature's body, which ends up blowing to several pieces. Shocked, the hunters ask who the hell this guy is, but Minju says he's just a janitor, and that everyone there needs to keep a secret, because money, honor, power, or being a hunter mean nothing to Kim. Is the only one who can work with his teammates wherever he wants. We find out that the news about what Lim did spread quickly through the media, leaving Seaman shouting. He asks what the man did to get kicked out of one of the association's most important operations. Standing before him are Lee and the captain of Team 2, who apologizes, then claims it was Minju and the janitor's fault as they were working together. The director then asks if he's really about to start making excuses to get off the hook, when everyone knows he tried to steal Minju's credit. Nervous, the man says that's not fair, because it was Seaman who wrote the mandatory participation list. Grabbing the man by the hair, the director asks if he thinks they're friends for him to try and act more important than his own boss, then warns that there's no way to let that situation slide now that the media knows everything. Soon, the man will leave and write up a leave of absence report immediately. The captain of Team 2 disappears quickly through the door. Lee then decides to ask what Seaman thinks about telling Lim to let the janitor know they'll help him. Facing the large glass windows, the director doesn't answer and instead asks what the man thinks about promoting Minju to team leader. We find out that Lim Dong-bin and the rest of Operation Team 2 were disciplined. And on top of that, the captain was demoted in rank, which for a hunter is practically the same as being fired. But things are going well with our team, and the same goes for Minju, who is now a team leader. Receiving flowers from her friends, the young woman is overjoyed, and wiping away her tears, she thanks everyone for everything. So Yin asks if the young woman is crying, but she denies it, saying something just got in her eye. She adds that she should have talked to everyone first, but everything happened so fast. Sang says it's really cool that she's now at Lee's level, but Minju says it's not quite like that, due to the difference in experience. Seeing the office kind of empty, Kim says there's not much she can do with so many people gone. The huntress agrees, then reveals that 17 people left, practically more than half the team. Noticing that the young woman is doubting herself again, the protagonist tells her it's good to have a little more pride, while thinking to himself that he didn't become a team leader until he was 30. Minju then says it's all thanks to him. Turning around, the guy tells her never to say that in front of her own team, not even by accident, because that way no one will respect her as a leader, not to mention the fact that those people were expelled because of him. Suddenly, the hunters under her command walk into the room and are shocked to see the cleaning team. Quickly, everyone straightens up and bows, then introduces themselves, saying it's an honor to meet them. A boy approaches Kim and says he was amazing in the last operation, then asks that everyone treat them as if they were part of the cleaning team and to ask for help whenever needed. Everyone bursts into laughter, even the protagonist, who asks what's wrong with these kids. Minju says that from now on, no one's going to mess with her friends, so our guy can clean and relax all he wants. A little later, the huntress says it's almost time for someone to arrive. Kim asks who that would be, and the young woman says it's an assistant. The protagonist then says she really has become a respectable leader, revealing in his thoughts that a personal assistant is only given to operation team leaders. Suddenly, something catches our guy's attention. It's the memory that his full-time assistant used to be Lee I-young, the only one who was with him when everything happened. and the person he spent the most time with. Worried, the guy asks Minju the assistant's name, but she says she won't tell him. Downcast, the protagonist decides to let it go since he wouldn't have much to say to the woman who probably wouldn't even recognize him. The cleaning team then says goodbye to the huntress, who asks everyone to be careful. When Kim opens the door, he bumps into someone who is about to walk in. It's Song Hye-yeon, Minju's new assistant. With a dark look, the protagonist says, "I'm not Minju," which leaves the young woman visibly startled. The huntress then says she's the one the girl is looking for and tells her to come in. Park calls out to Kim, saying they'll be late at this rate, while the protagonist double-checks to see if it's not Young. Frustrated upon seeing it's not his former assistant, he says goodbye and walks away. Sometime later, we see the new Yeon saying she's exhausted, while thinking that it's only been 2 months since she was hired and she's already an assistant. A woman appears and asks what the problem is, none other than Deputy Manager Lee Young. The girl says her boss is a good person, but the director probably doesn't care much about her. However, the woman says that staying out of Seaman's sight means she's doing a good job. She then wishes the girl good luck because she heard Minju has a good relationship with the janitor who's backed by the president. Yeon says she ran into the guy earlier but didn't like him one bit. And after listing everything that's wrong with Kim, she finishes by saying she bets he's never had a girlfriend. Showing interest, the manager asks if the guy hasn't been working hard for the cleaning team since the group's budget suddenly increased, and he even got rid of operation team members who disrespected his crew. The assistant then says Kim only did all that for his own reputation, and when a big problem comes up, he'll avoid taking the blame. With a hand on her chin, Young says now she's curious to find out what kind of person the guy really is. Elsewhere, the protagonist scratches his ear while wondering who's talking about him behind his back. Another workday begins. Inside a dungeon, Kim hums, "Tell me where you go, I'll sweep the way." Next to him, Minju chimes in with, I'll sweep. Surprised, Kim asks if she shouldn't be working. She responds by asking if that's not what she's doing. Annoyed, the protagonist says her team members must be thrilled about this. Sure enough, the other hunters are behind the young woman asking how they should do the tasks. Laughing, Park says he'll teach them how it's done. So Yeon then asks if anyone wants to help her disinfect, while Sang says the work won't get done unless someone helps. Excited, the trio of hunters says to leave it to them, since Operation Team 2 and Cleaning Team 3 are now one and the same. Holding the broom, the protagonist decides to give up. Sometime later, he asks Minju what the real problem is. The young woman then says she's having trouble putting together the monthly operations plan. Our guy asks her to explain more. The huntress says they need to clear 50 dungeons that month but need at least 20 more people to do it. On top of that, she says they were told blue-grade dungeons won't count toward the quota. Kim says that's nonsense, since the Matrix distributes lower-class dungeons randomly, but for the association, all that matters is that the job gets done. He says you can clear those dungeons with 3 or 4 people and split the group into 3 teams to finish 2 dungeons per day instead of 1. Impressed, Minju says she hadn't thought of that, thanking him and saying she always ends up owing him something. Kim says it's fine, but if the problem's solved, she should go because he needs to get back to cleaning. Minju then asks if she makes him uncomfortable. He says no, but the girl hiding back there does. Speaking softly, the huntress asks if he and his assistant already knew each other. Our guy denies it, saying the first time he saw the young woman was in the office the day before. Minju then says she thought they were exes. Shocked, the protagonist asks if she's trying to die. Yeon approaches and says the young woman needs to attend the general operations meeting soon. The huntress, however, says there's still plenty of time, so her assistant should go ahead and reserve a table somewhere. Happy, the assistant runs off, while Minju reveals she made that up because she needed to talk to Kim. She then asks if he knows anyone on the support team. When he says no, he asks why. The huntress reveals that someone from the support team called saying they wanted to meet him, but Yeon must not find out. Thinking to himself, the protagonist wonders if it's because he dismantled Operation Team 2. Stepping away, our guy asks Minju to let the person know he'll meet them when he's free. After the cleaning is done, Minju announces she'll treat everyone to lunch to celebrate her promotion. And just like that, the next day arrives. We see a little boy inside a dungeon looking for his brother. Someone then says they're right over there. As he gets closer, the child can't see clearly and asks if it's really his brother. Crawling on the ground, a monster asks for help. Frightened, the boy asks if he's okay. But unfortunately, the creature is already way too close, and apparently very, very hungry. Desperate, the little boy starts to cry and scream. We cut to the association building, where the latest news says that around 12:30, a middle school boy entered a dungeon by accident and was attacked by a monster. Luckily, the injuries weren't serious. The problem is that witnesses reported there were no barriers protecting the dungeon entrance. Face-to-face with Seamin, Minju says dungeons should never be accessible to the public. Furious, the man says everyone knows that and asks why she didn't set up the barriers. We find out the group found the boy as they were leaving, knows a close call. Slamming his hand on the table, the director demands to know how this happened and who the idiot was that made the mistake. Stepping forward, Kim says it was his fault. He forgot to put up the barrier when he left to eat. Puzzled, the huntress says she's sure she saw him place the protection. The protagonist then tells her to lower her voice since they're in front of the director. A little calmer, the man asks if this was a mistake by the cleaning team, but Kim says no, insisting that the fault is his alone. Si-min then asks what he gains by taking all the blame. The protagonist says nothing, and that he's just telling the truth, and that he'll make sure to take responsibility for his mistake personally the next day. Si-min says he understands and informs him that the hearing is scheduled for 9 a.m. But with an incident like that, the guy won't escape disciplinary action, so everyone can leave now. Outside the room, Minju starts trembling and asks what the protagonist thinks he's doing, because she saw him set up the barrier with her own eyes. Doing all that just to protect the cleaning team is ridiculous. Besides, even without the barrier, a child wouldn't just wander into a dungeon that was supposed to be cleared, which means someone set this up, so the guy doesn't need to take the blame for something he didn't do. Kim simply replies with a "so what," because even if it was a setup, there's no way to make the real culprit confess in such a short time, especially since they're not dealing with ordinary people. There's no way to find evidence before the hearing. Walking away, the protagonist reveals that he knows it was a setup because Vega wouldn't appear in that dungeon and he himself had been attacked, but none of that matters now. After all, he's about to unlock another skill. Kim Minju doesn't think the protagonist did the right thing. It makes no sense for a child to enter a dungeon by accident, especially since the dungeon would disappear after 30 minutes. And that dungeon had already been cleared, meaning there shouldn't have been any monsters there. Someone definitely staged the whole thing to frame Kim Jun-woo. The culprit is probably someone from the association, but the huntress can't do anything about it. She's extremely frustrated. Her team also finds the situation suspicious. Something feels off. Jun-woo shouldn't take all the responsibility alone, so they plan to find the real culprit. The team leader looks at them, unsure of what to decide. But with resolve, she chooses to suspend operations so they can focus on finding the culprit. Even if they fail, the mission will still be completed later, so the leader asks if anyone objects to the plan. No one has any objections. Before she can continue, the deputy manager interrupts. A few hours earlier, Song Hai-yan was crying over the fact that the accident happened just as she started the job. Lee A-young is with her, trying to figure out the plans of the operations team. The assistant says Kim Jun-woo is going to take public responsibility, even though he's not the one at fault. The deputy manager finds it strange that someone would take the blame just to avoid hurting the team. She doesn't understand what the boy is planning, but maybe he really could sweep all the filth out of that association. She then asks what the assistant thinks about helping the operations team uncover the culprit. Back in the present, the team leader asks what someone from the support team is doing there. The deputy manager says she's there to help, but the leader says they haven't made any progress yet. For now, they're planning to check security cameras. Lee A-young says she arrived at the perfect time because they wouldn't be able to access the cameras without police authorization. And in any case, there were no cameras inside that dungeon, but some cars were parked nearby, which means there might still be dashcams. Assistant Hai-yan is tracking them down at that moment. Once the dashcams are found, they'll be able to view the footage since the deputy manager has the paperwork granting access. The team leader thanks her for the help, but Lee A-young won't help for free. She asks the huntress if she's close to the protagonist. She's curious to know more about him. Is he a freelancer? A spy? It's the first time Kim Min-ju has heard those kinds of theories. The deputy manager finds it odd, since those rumors have been going around the main office for a long time. Embarrassed, the huntress says she doesn't have many friends in the association yet. Lee A-young can't believe the team leader actually thinks the protagonist is just a janitor. Everyone starts to feel sorry for her. A janitor taking the blame and a team leader mobilizing an entire operation to help him. The deputy manager is impressed that there are still good people in the association and says she wants to meet Kim Jun-woo in person. And so Team 2 is ready to begin the operation. Meanwhile, Kim Jun-woo is already preparing for the hearing. He gets a call from So-yeon asking if he knows where Kim Min-ju is. But the protagonist reassures her it's hard to get in touch with team leaders. The girl agrees but says she received a strange message. It said she should try to delay Kim Jun-woo as much as possible at his conference. Realizing what Kim Min-ju was planning, he hurriedly ends the call. He tries to call the team leader because that's a bad idea. The girl answers his call. She says she's heading to Daejeon with the team, and the guide pushes back, saying that's not her responsibility. But the swordswoman is determined to help him, so she went out in search of the dashcams. However, the teacher isn't happy about it. He wanted her to stay out of it. So he asks the girl to find the location of the cars. Determined, she confirms she'll send it. She begins to say the name of the injured child, but the guy hangs up in her face. Then, frustrated and angry, he starts yelling in the middle of the street. If she gets that info, she might discover his secret and ruin his chances of returning to the future. Kim Jun-woo activates his super speed ability and rushes toward the location. At the hospital, the deputy manager visits the injured child and identifies herself as being from the association. An angry relative of the child says he doesn't want to talk to people like her and turns his back. She says the janitor will make a public statement, but he's innocent in all this. But the man thinks that's fair, not for the cleaning team, but for Jun-woo. He'd love to see him take the fall. Elsewhere in the city, a man calmly parks his car in the lot. He's thinking about dinner. It's going to be chicken. But before he realizes it, Kim Jun-woo slams into his car window. Startled, the man actually thinks he's looking at a zombie. The warrior, face battered from running, asks if he could cooperate with the association. But the man doesn't understand what the organization would want from someone like him, just a regular citizen. Before he knows it, the young man breaks the dash cam on his car. Furious, he yells at Jun-woo, but the guy simply says the association will compensate him. Then he activates super speed again, ready to track down the remaining dash cams. The team arrives shortly afterward and finds the car they're looking for. Kim Min-ju asks if the man can assist the association in an operation, but already fed up, the man tells them to back off before he sues them. Lee Jin-ho says it's no use, that dashcam was already smashed. The team leader realizes someone beat them to it and doesn't understand what that person is trying to do. At the hospital, the deputy manager stands in front of the child's relative. She doesn't get why he's trying to pin the blame and asks if he was ordered by the association to frame an innocent person. That's when we learn the man used to be a hunter. He finds it laughable to still be taking orders from the organization. According to him, they couldn't even properly apologize for what they did to his brother. He gets angry when he hears they're trying to help and says he won't answer anything else. Some people at the hospital watch the scene with curiosity, so Lee Ah-young decides to come back when there's less attention. That hunter returns to his brother's room, still badmouthing the association. But the little boy asks him to stop. He's tired of the hospital and getting injections all day. The man then changes his tone and asks the boy not to complain and to help him get revenge. Suddenly, they hear a loud crash at the window. It's Kim Jun-woo entering without permission. And then he realizes that this man was the one who removed the barrier and released the monster. He forced his own little brother into a dungeon just to take revenge. The boy realizes his older brother wants revenge on the same person who saved him. But the man blames the kid. It's hard to keep a household running when you're unemployed. Annoyed, the warrior says that he started the fight first, but he decides to forgive him. After all, without realizing it, he helped him unlock the polymorph skill. So he turns to leave. But before that, he tells him to take better care of the child and not raise him filled with so much bitterness. The boy approaches his kneeling brother and says his enemy forgave him. The next day, all the reporters are eagerly waiting to hear the janitor's official statement. First, he begins by apologizing for the incident. He says it was careless of him not to place the barrier. And finally, he takes full responsibility for what happened. But before he can continue, Park Jun-tae interrupts him. The leader of the cleaning team steps onto the platform, stunning everyone. He asks the young man to step down and says that his team will save him this time. He explains to the reporters that since the young man was under his command, he was the one responsible for what happened. Han Sang-hyuk thinks that this way, no one on the team is truly at fault. Moo So-yeon and Hyuk step forward at the conference, and suddenly, everyone on the team starts claiming responsibility. But Kim Jun-woo isn't grateful. In fact, he's quite annoyed that they're interfering with his plans. One of the reporters asks if the whole incident was caused by the cleaning team, but the team insists on blaming themselves, not the group as a whole. Ju-woo yells for all of them to shut up. He asks the journalist to write that the fault is his and his alone. Then Kim Min-ju appears and says the injured child has something to say. The boy says that he entered the dungeon on his own and by his own choice, and apologizes for doing so. The audience watches the scene in confusion. The team leader says the cleaning team is innocent. Her brother, watching from a distance, says that no one will believe the kid. The deputy manager is there and says the boy did everything he could to cover for his brother's actions. The young man blames himself for making the boy go through this situation. He decides to turn himself in and heads toward the conference. The child watches his brother approach and we see a flashback. They're both at their father's funeral and the older brother promises to take responsibility for him. Back at the conference, the boy panics when he sees his brother confessing. He asks if the man is going to jail and he replies that he needs to pay for his crime. The child cries upon realizing his brother will be imprisoned because of him. But the young man reassures him, saying he'll be back sooner than expected. He also advises him to eat well and respect his classmates while he's gone. The boy asks him to take care of himself too. And the team continues to blame themselves for what happened, making Kim Min-ju even more irritated. The first ability obtained was super speed. The second was Hellfire. The third was excessive immersion. And the last one, polymorph. The next day, the protagonist realizes he managed to unlock all four. He truly believes the team ruined everything the day before. After that scene, people became even more interested in the story. It's hard to believe all it took was a single media appearance for the public to start paying attention to the cleaning team. He asks Min-ju what the purpose of being there is. The team leader introduces the deputy manager to the young man, who says it's a pleasure to meet him. She introduces herself, but our protagonist doesn't understand why she's doing that. Then he remembers. That woman is Lee Ah-young, his former assistant. The manager holds out her hand, waiting for a polite handshake. He looks at her, slightly thrown off by how human she seems now. So different from her personality in the future. To him, that woman is a suspect in his murder, so he knows he must be careful with her. They shake hands while the woman begins to praise him, saying she's heard a lot about him. The deputy manager sits down and says he's not as charismatic as she expected. He asks if he was supposed to be, and the woman laughs. She has something to tell him. Lee Young asks how far he wants to go in life. The warrior doesn't understand the question, so she asks again, how high does he want to climb in the association? She says it's possible to reach even the position of Director General Mitchell So. She mentions that she wants to see the organization grow, and even though she values hierarchy, it's not exactly her thing. Things between the cleaning and support teams are the same. Both are treated poorly. When she saw him break those standards and stand up to leadership, she became interested in him as someone capable of bringing change. She and the support team are determined to help him achieve his goals and rise through the ranks. The two agree that they're talking about the same thing with shared interests. The team leader, sitting between them, realizes both have strong personalities. The deputy manager doesn't know the protagonist's exact plans, but is sure he must have a few tricks up his sleeve. Kim Minju interrupts and asks if Lee Young is sure she has the approval of everyone on the support team. But she confidently says yes. She has many fans on that team. Whether it's through equipment or careful attention, they can support him. She's confident in her proposal, and the young man can see it. Her father is an executive member of the association. Because of Dusik Lee, that woman was able to become a manager at such a young age, and the two of them worked together to build a solid organization. But that didn't last for long. Her father was fired and stripped of his position. As a result, Lee Young lost her authority over the support team. She then began working as his secretary, and that made her become a cold person. But at that moment, back in the past, our protagonist wonders if all of that was part of Dusik Lee's plan, and whether that would lead to the disbandment of the cleaning and operations team. That's why he thanks her for the offer, but declines it. The deputy manager asks why, since he needs her and the help she's offering. He says he doesn't need anyone's help, which leads the woman to call him egocentric. The protagonist realizes that trusting her is too risky, so he says he doesn't have many reasons to refuse the offer, yet he leaves the place. When he returns to the cleaning team, he is warmly welcomed. The team captain says that Han Sang-hyuk has taken a few days off. The protagonist asks if he got sick, but Park Jun-tae says the young man is accompanying his sister, who came to visit Korea. His sister works for the International Association and is the only family he has. He remembers his colleague and says he's going to be quite busy having to deal with someone from the association. So that weekend, it'll be just the rest of them working. At first, they start cleaning the acid solution spill on the floor. Now tired, they ask each other whether they have managed to finish cleaning all that material. But someone is following them around. It's Sang-shin Koo, a journalism student interested in telling the story of the cleaning team. He explains that headquarters allowed him to do that research. But none of the team understands why there's so much interest. Sang-shin says that after what happened, the world wants to know more about their team. Many speak well of them, others criticize them, but no one truly understands their work. That's why he's so determined to write a special article about them. Talking among themselves, they're not thrilled by the idea, but don't see much of a problem either. Park Jun-tae worries the article might push the public even further away, and the protagonist agrees. But the warrior has a question and asks the journalist if the article could attract more candidates to the job. However, the man isn't sure the article alone will be enough to do that. Then Kim Joo-woo asks him to make the job look like the easiest in the world in the article. If he does that, he can write whatever he wants about them. Excited, the journalist agrees and promises to write that being a dungeon cleaner is so easy even kids will dream of it. Within the organization, there's concern that the article might increase the cleaning team's popularity even more. But the general director is confident, believing no one will be interested in such an unglamorous job. But then he senses something's wrong. He asks his employee if he told the cleaning team about the article, and the guy realizes he made a huge mistake. Two reporters reflect on how much work it takes to clean a dungeon. One of them asks Kim Jun-woo how long he's been working there. They kept chattering loudly and asking endless questions. Jun-woo gets irritated by the murmuring and also by having to put up with all of it. But he remembers that it's only through this process that he'll be able to unlock a skill. And more importantly, a good article from the journalist could attract more candidates to his team. Upon entering the dungeon, they immediately come across a monster. The frightened men are shocked that the creature is already dead, and once again question what Kim Jun-woo is going to do about it. This is his time to shine and finally put on a show. Excited by the chance to dismantle the monster, the boy's eyes sparkle. Without thinking, he thrusts his sword into the belly of the fallen beast and invites one of the guys to feel the thrill. The big bear finally appears defeated on the ground and then completely torn apart like a teddy bear. One of the men is stunned with the creature's bodily fluids all over his face. Sang-shin leans back, even more frightened by what he saw. Now the rest of the cleaning team stares at him with intense, threatening looks, warning that he should be more careful. Scared, the guy simply faints. The others are surprised and try to help him. Meanwhile, Kim Jun-woo reflects on changing the impression everyone had of him. One of the reporters is astonished by the intense work of the cleaning team, which has no reinforcements and needs to clean multiple dungeons a day. He can hardly believe that even with exhaustion and deprivation, they still enjoy the job. Realizing that might sound very negative in the article, the cleaner tries to quickly think of what could be appealing about this work. His colleague then remembers it's payday, and at that moment he thinks money is the only thing that could attract people to a job like this. After all, even if the job isn't great, if you offer a huge amount of money, a lot of people will be interested, especially once they find out there's a bonus. He checks his account to see how much he got paid and is disappointed to discover it's a pittance compared to what he used to earn as a hunter. It was over 300 hours of work for such little pay, yet the others on the team are happy to have earned slightly more than usual. Kim Jun-woo panics when he sees the journalist approaching his phone, about to discover that the salary is even worse than imagined. Surely anyone would rather die than do this job for so little money. He knows that if this information gets into the article, it will scare off even the NEETs who are desperate for work. Thinking of a quick escape, he lies and says they only receive half of their pay for the month. The young interviewer is surprised and relieved to realize he was mistaken, because if that was just half, then they must make much more than average. That's a huge plus for attracting more people, even if the job is challenging. But Kim Jun-woo's teammates are unsettled by such a blatant lie. They warn that if they're found out, they'll never be able to recruit new members again. But he doesn't care and loudly insists he's not lying. Meanwhile, the CEO in the office states that he's washing his hands of the cleaning team's situation and doesn't want to get involved anymore. To him, Kim Jun-woo not only has the association president on his side, but he's also completely insane. He questions the reasons behind Jun-woo's involvement with the cleaning team and concludes they must not be good, since the team has nothing to offer. Either way, he believes it's better to stay out of the hunter's way. But right then, Jun-woo bursts into the room. Seo Min-cheol finally asks him what kind of trouble he's gotten himself into now. Getting straight to the point, Jun-woo urgently asks for a raise. The boss is shocked as Jun-woo is still in his probation period and has only completed 1 month of work, but out of curiosity, he asks how much. The rookie cleaner, without hesitation, asks for double. The man is completely furious. He really doesn't think a temporary employee can just have the audacity to make such a demand. But Jun-woo argues that the current pay doesn't match the work. Not wanting to argue, the director agrees to raise only his salary, but the kid boldly asks for double for the entire team. This enrages the director even more. He gets so mad at Jun-woo's attitude that he starts asking if he hates him that much to come in with such an absurd proposal. It's Madima's specialist's job, he argues, while the boy simply analyzes his personality in silence. He then apologizes and says that's not possible without authorization from the full board of directors. End of discussion. Disappointed, the young man reflects on how he got ahead of himself, thinking he could demand whatever he wanted and take the opportunity to unlock 2 skills. But just then, someone walks into the room loudly, claiming the leader is favoring Team 1 somehow. Only afterward does the indiscreet man notice there's an employee in the room. Jun-woo says he was just leaving anyway. But as he walks out the door, the man who arrived follows him instead of staying behind. Out of nowhere, he takes out his phone and snaps his selfie, leaving Jun-woo confused about the reason. It turns out the young cleaner has a big fan, and it's none other than the other director, Lee Du-shik, a powerful man known by all, but who was on the verge of falling out of favor within the association, and Jun-woo knows it well. He's the father of Lee Ah-yeon, whom Jun-woo has been trying to avoid, and he's surprised to learn that someone so strict is into idol culture. But it seems his work as a cleaner is gaining popularity since his fame has reached one of the most important figures in the company. Talking about all of Jun-woo's accomplishments, the boss gets excited and says he's been doing well and that everyone has been talking about his actions. The young man doesn't really understand where these rumors came from, but he takes advantage of the situation and says he's been looking for better pay. It seems like it's his lucky day as the other director decides to listen to the proposal and try to help however he can without promising anything. But Jun-woo is sharp and realizes that all this flattery is because the director also wants a favor in return. The executive director reveals that he suspects a scheme orchestrated by the other director and Soo-yeon to benefit Team 1. But the boy says he knows nothing about this story of alliances and factions within the corporation. The man doesn't argue and just asks the young man to make a strong case for the salary raise, but Jun-woo can't come up with much. However, the negotiation isn't over, and the boss sees the perfect opportunity to boost Team 2 under Jun-woo's leadership. That way he can block the favoritism toward Team 1 and still help Team 2 outperform them in results. And with that, he generates a strong performance to present to the board as justification for the requested raise. Du-shik puts pressure on him and asks him to prove he's truly capable. A few days later, they're in a meeting with the entire team, wondering about the reason for this sudden gathering. Jun-woo asks about the payment season for the operations teams. You can see in his eyes that he's determined to unite Cleaning Team 3 with Team 2 so they can reach first place together. And at that moment, he accepted the challenge. Everyone asks why Jun-woo gathered them, and he brings up the payment season again, asking if everything is running smoothly. They say no and complain that they have no support, while Team 1 gets backing from Director Cheol and Team 3 has a hunter. Jun-woo demands results and says he'll help all of them. Everyone seems surprised by his attitude, but he keeps explaining like a true leader that they each have value. Finally, he asks if they're ready to go all in. Kim Bin-ju gets fired up and agrees immediately. Everyone else grows excited with the proposal he presented. He takes the lead and says his cleaning team is not irrelevant and performs one of the most systematically important tasks. To him, this is a job that requires coordination with the operations team and true collaboration. Then comes another surprise. They're not alone. Another team will be joining the strategy. The deputy manager of the support team joins them, even though she's reluctant about responding to the call from the same colleague who rejected her before. The atmosphere in the room gets awkward as she smugly points out that after rejecting her, he now admits he needs her after all, and that it won't be easy. With cleverness, he reflects that he really does need that woman's help to win, even while trying to avoid contact and needing to swallow his pride. Pleased, she keeps up her charm and offers to help. Excited, he goes over some details of the strategy and the role of the support team, which includes very complex tasks that leave the leader stunned. Basically, he wants a series of class of weapons, drones, and other demands that she considers excessive. He argues that this isn't just about the rankings. For Junwoo, now is the time to show potential, and he has no intention of coming out defeated, which shocks everyone with his competitive spirit. With conviction, he repeats that the main goal is to be number 1. She points out that Team 1 has a major advantage with inside information, but that's not an issue since no one knows where or when a dungeon will open. He has a strong intuition that a dungeon is about to appear. Suddenly, one of the twins reveals himself in the room, leaving everyone surprised by his presence. He questions how the cleaning team is supposed to lead an operation like this. Everyone seems to reflect on the fact that he might have a point. A loud crash interrupts their doubtful thoughts. A dungeon has just appeared, exactly as Jun predicted. The moment has come, and anyone who wants to back out should leave now or go all the way with them. Equipment is required for the support team as Ah-young begins to prepare. Taking charge of the control room, she begins doing her part by supplying gear and weapons. Trying to speed up the process, she gets irritated with one of her team members who suggests they stop producing the tools. Knowing that a delay could ruin everything, she pressures the employee to request more materials. Frustrated and with her competitive spirit more alive than ever, she lets out a scream. Her assistant shows concern, especially because Team 1 will definitely show up. Unbothered, she can't wait to crush Director Cheol and the leader of Team 1. Explosions are happening everywhere. A massive skull emerges in the dungeon and many other skeletons pour out from inside it. The battle begins with the leader of Team 2 taking the lead. She lands precise strikes, wielding her sword with great skill. It's a giant iron skeleton, seemingly a tough opponent that requires high-level ability. Junwoo quickly devises a strategy to attack the weakest point at the neck bone and plans to handle the giant on his own. The members of Team 1 charge in using everything they've learned. Kim Minju jumps straight into the fight and proves she knows exactly what she's doing, just like her teammate, who is super strong and agile. She supports her leader with a boost that launches her forward. The leap is nearly a flight, aimed directly at the terrifying skull. Part of the group uses a powerful weapon that shoots lightning bolts. Still midair, Minju activates her powerful skills. The skull seems to challenge her with its glowing, frightening eyes, but its head is blown away by the force of the young fighter. Junwoo is stunned by what he just witnessed. Suddenly, he's struck by the bony hands of one of the monsters and falling debris. His teammate panics, fearing the worst. But as the dust clears, it reveals the young man standing firm in the face of danger. There's a sword lying on the ground beside him. Activating his ultimate skill, he becomes incredibly powerful. The skeletal and terrifying creature stares him down. A brilliant light bursts from the sword. The young man delivers a high right leg kick in midair. The power radiating from him is unbelievable, far too strong. It's the signal for his teammate from the cleaning crew to carry out their plan. Excited, Park makes a dramatic entrance, hanging from a drone, causing secondhand embarrassment. Carrying an ultra-tech cutter, he saws through parts of the skeleton bones. The cleaner is amazed by the precision of the weapon and decides he wants to keep it forever. But that won't be possible. Back in the control room, Ah-young is in a frantic rhythm and announces the opening of another dungeon in Suikodan. Everyone is satisfied with the success of the first mission and confident that at this pace, claiming first place won't be difficult. However, Team 1 is already feeling the pressure from Team 2's sudden rise. The results are shared with Director Cheol, and they're anything but promising, predicting a crushing victory for Team 2. Once again, the boss explodes in anger of the bold cleaner Kim Junwoo. Frustrated, he tells his team to use every skill they have and do something instead of just standing around watching. Everyone on Team 1 is exhausted but continues receiving shouted orders from their leader. Meanwhile, Kim Junwoo keeps leading his team with determination, saying they need to strike that monster quickly, as it's getting even stronger. They keep attacking it as much as they can. Then the protagonist tells Park Jun-ta to rest a bit, as he's clearly exhausted. Operations Team 3 observes the enormous monster. Even so, Team 1 is still ahead, with Team 2 close behind and even overtaking them by a point. The support team has formed an alliance with the operations and cleaning teams, which infuriates the boss. The whole situation really gets under his skin and he sees it as unfair. But if the control team is truly helping those teams, they might become an independent division. The boss asks if Chang Hyam's working with the cleaning team. Nervous, the man firmly denies it. But to be safe, from that moment on, Chang Hyam is forbidden from authorizing any more subjugations. He believes tuning permissions have already been given to Operations Team 2. In the dungeon, one of the members asks if they should wait a bit longer before heading to the next mission, but the warrior says no. He asks Mr. Ku if he thinks this is an easy job. He says his job is to sit and watch others' works, so yes, it's a dream job. He places his hand on the journalist's shoulder. He mentions wanting to recruit new people for this role and counts on the man's help. Mr. Ku thinks to himself that the guy should have just said that from the beginning. The manager of the support team says something urgent happened and they need to withdraw. Team 1 secured priority for all the dungeons. Mikhail's son was responsible for that. Now Team 1 has far more subjugations and is in the lead. They're making the cleaning team do all the heavy lifting. And now only 3 dungeons remain. And they don't know what to do, because if they lose, they'll no longer have a chance at the salary increase or at having the article published. At that moment, Team 1 had probably gotten even further ahead. The problem is that there are too many dungeons that need cleaning, but they have to keep going. Otherwise, the dungeons will remain infested. Our protagonist isn't worried about himself, but about his team. So he decides to call in the support and operations teams. He remarks that Michael So is an idiot. The jerk doesn't understand how that team could handle the job, so he considers them ungrateful. He asks the leader of the control team to step forward, but the deputy manager shows up without even being called. The boss says he warned her not to bother him. However, the woman says she's there to report something that happened. The leader asks if she really has the nerve to speak like that to her superior, but we all think that's nonsense. He says she knew very well the danger that uncleaned dungeons could cause. Some members of her team dispatched a large portion of the cleaning crew. The protagonist even left a message for her saying she had wasted her time. So the woman walks away feeling like everyone is leaving her out of the action. But she has no time for that. She also needs to start cleaning. The boss bursts out laughing at her attitude. He wonders what that message was supposed to mean. That's why he tells his subordinate to open a disciplinary case with the committee. Apparently, he's lost control of the cleaning team too. But the warrior no longer knows what he should be doing, and neither does the boss, who's clearly bothered by the whole situation. One of the managers comments that things have gone too far for them to turn back now. An employee bursts into the room saying they need to call the operations team because Team 2 and the support team left to help the cleaning crew. But it's hard to believe those 2 teams would abandon the operation just for that. One of them comments that it's actually a good thing because now they can move up to the final rank. But the boss scolds him and calls him an idiot, saying it means they lost the chance to fix that mess. The woman asks why the cuts haven't been made yet, but Kim Minju counters that you shouldn't force it. You have to follow the direction of the fiber. Usually, the red juice pours out when they do that, but this time they're in a hurry, so it's better to dismantle the monster first. The warrior comments that Ali Young is doing a great job with the cleaning, even though it's her first time. When asked why she's doing so well, she says it's because she helped that team a short while ago. Looking a bit upset, the deputy manager complains about being left out of that helps, saying she would have liked to take part. The swordswoman gets nervous seeing her teammate feel left out, but the woman says she was just teasing her. They don't have much time to linger, so Kim Jun-woo suggests they get out of there before the dungeons start to close. Tired, Kim Min-ju thanks her mentor for all of his hard work, and the team gets ready to leave. Finding her mentor acting a little strange, the warrior asks if something is bothering him. The young man says that many of his teammates are suffering needlessly, and he feels responsible for that. Impressed by this rare moment of vulnerability, the young woman responds that she didn't expect him to care so much. Park Jun-ta tells him not to worry. They'll follow the plan no matter what. And besides, they don't care about his rank position. The warrior wonders what must lie behind the dungeon doors since they spent 4 whole days just cleaning. They'll have 3 weeks off, but her teammate quickly shuts down her idea of working overtime. That team still has a lot of energy, but now it's time to find something to eat. Everyone gets ready to leave the dungeon, but someone appears in front of them. It's Lee Du-shik, who says the team agreement is over. According to him, people are only after achievements, so he can't allow any more operations. Therefore, the control team has been called in for all ongoing missions. With that, Team 2 falls back to 2nd place in the rankings. The team is still happy with the position, especially after spending 4 days to finish that area. But the warrior isn't satisfied. He didn't unlock the skill he wanted. The boss tells the boy that it's still a win, but Kim Jun-woo is only getting more stressed about it. Even so, he says he's proud of what the team accomplished, because it couldn't have been easy. He also has something important to discuss with the protagonist, but the young man isn't the slightest bit excited about that conversation. The boss's plans are very obvious, and he doesn't want to be part of that. Back at home, Park Jun-ta thanks the team for their hard work, but the deputy manager suggests they should all celebrate together with a meal, and the team agrees excitedly. They invite Jun-woo to come along, saying he should join too. Not very thrilled, the young man realizes he has no other option but to accept. Now, everyone is laughing, drinking, and celebrating together. A disciplinary committee meeting was held at headquarters to resolve the incident. The team captain argued that they did clean the dungeons but didn't know all the resources had been funneled to Team 1. The CEO's justification was even more absurd. He said he let Team 1 monopolize the resources because they were an elite team. Obviously, no one bought that excuse, and he received a major pay cut because of it. And of course, the head of the control team was reprimanded as well. So that's how the incident came to a close. At the cafe, Kim Jun-woo asks why the deputy manager called him there. She finds it embarrassing, but says there was a high cost for helping him, and it's a cost she can afford to cover. Sarcastically, he says he thought her help was simply an act of kindness, not pure materialism, but the woman replies that she never said she'd work for free. The warrior asks if this has anything to do with the executive director. She says no, that the matter is personal. But she finds it strange that he made that connection, since she never mentioned Lee Du-shik was her father, though the young man manages to hide his reaction. In any case, after all of that, many people at headquarters are paying more attention to the cleaning team. But the protagonist sees that attention as normal since his team was involved in so many incidents. However, the deputy manager says it's the opposite. Everyone is jealous of them. She explains that even with all the difficulties, they still managed to finish in second place. On top of that, everyone contributed to the cleaning effort, which improved their overall performance. She also says she noticed he was aiming for first place and he doesn't understand what that has to do with the deal they made. She then reveals that from now on, they'll have another cleaning team added to their unit. Apparently, the association finally recognized the importance of that department. According to her, no one else is as responsible as he is to lead that team. They need someone qualified, and even though he's just a cleaner, he's the ideal person. That's why he's being promoted to captain. But the warrior has only been in that role for 2 months. He doesn't think it's right to take the position from Park Junta. However, the woman explains they also created the new role of cleaning division chief, and Captain Park has been chosen to take on that position. The original plan was to give that role to Jun-woo, but she knew he wouldn't accept it. Thinking it over, he starts to believe that maybe the idea isn't so bad after all. The problem is that as a captain, he'll have more work and more responsibilities. He asks what hiring new staff has to do with her. She says it has nothing to do with her, but it would be interesting if someone like him filled the role. Proudly, the young man says he doesn't need any of that. Plenty of people will definitely apply for the position. Lee Young doesn't understand what he means by that. He explains his plan with the journalist to write an article presenting the job as the most perfect and easy one imaginable. But the young woman interrupts him and says the article has already been published. Confused, Kim Jun-woo grabs his phone to read what was written, and he can't believe what he's seeing. The journalist wrote that the job was tough and full of danger. Few people can handle the intense workload. But cleaning wasn't the only challenge for that team. They're not just any team, their work is just as important as operations. That team is what sustains the entire success of the operation. He calls Jun-woo a natural leader and someone who cares about the future of the job. The journalist is clearly proud of the work he did. Back at the office, the manager asks if the article turned out as great as he expected. Now, everyone sees them as members of a special operations unit. Public opinion about them has changed significantly. But despite that, no one applied for the job. Since everyone thinks the job is too difficult, they don't see themselves as capable of doing it. The protagonist is furious and curses the journalist who wrote the article. Lee Soo-young can't believe the protagonist was actually promoted. He doesn't understand it, since only Lee Du-shik has the authority to make that decision. Min Cheol says none of that matters because Kim Jun-woo is the one who truly holds the power now. If that happens, the young man will be responsible for Team 6. The CEO says he's interested in copying the new team model in Team 3. That way, they can try placing someone more qualified than Kim Jun-woo as the team leader. In other words, create a new team and expand their influence. But he claims his only intention is to assign capable people to the job. Directors Song Chul-sik and Ko Eun-young are on their way to take part in that leadership and recruit qualified individuals. Lee Soo-yu says maybe that's not such a bad idea. If the whole plan works out as expected, they might be able to regain their influence in the association. In other words, depending on who takes the leadership role of Team 6, the main axis of the association could shift the future. Either way, he asks Soo-young to start looking for talented freelancers. Soo-young asks what criteria to use, but the boss says to look for people with operational experience and high rank. It would also be great if they could find a young person to take the role. They can't afford to lose a single battle. The protagonist is sipping his tea while resting. He asks what Kim Min-ju is thinking. He worries that because he became a leader so quickly, his team might hate him. But his friend doesn't agree with that. To him, everyone in the organization is like that. The young woman asks how recruiting new team members has gone. But of course, the protagonist hasn't done that and doesn't want to. He doesn't know what to do since he doesn't know anyone, and the girl thinks about how lonely he seems. Kim Jun-woo isn't motivated for any of it and doesn't think it's something to worry about. His friend asks what criteria he would use to fill the positions. He says someone obedient and cheerful would be ideal. Then he asks what criteria she would choose. She thinks of someone with a sense of justice and who cares about their team. Suddenly, a man comes in looking for Kim Jun-woo. The warrior asks who the person is. That's Paeun Chang-hyun, leader of the control team. Both wonder what someone in that role wants to discuss with them. Agitated, he says the young man has to lead cleaning Team 6. He says the directors are planning to place someone on their side in that team. Clearly desperate, Chang-hyun says he came looking for help because he can't deal with Min Cheol anymore. Now many people in the association are interested in Team 6. Everyone is looking for someone like Kim Jun-woo to take that position. But the young man finds it strange that someone would be interested in the cleaning team instead of the operations team. The employee shows him a list of skilled individuals from various guilds and asks for his help in choosing the best. But the warrior is confused, first by the enormous stack of paperwork and then by Chang Han's request. The man warns that he could be overtaken by a new team, even after becoming a leader. Our protagonist isn't sure what decision to make and asks why the employee cares so much. He starts talking about having too many teams to manage, but Kim Jun-woo cuts him off. Still, the man goes on and says that no team would want to be under Kim Jun-woo's command. The protagonist tells him to stop talking, because he just had a great idea. This now seems like a tempting offer. The employee's eyes widen when he realizes the protagonist accepted. He says he's excited for the team leader to be part of that cooperation. Kim Jun-woo asks for the full candidate list, now determined that this is a new opportunity. In another scene, we see a boy complaining about the smell of garbage on the floor. He's startled to see his sister sitting on the couch. He tells her to get out of there and asks what she's doing. The young woman points her phone at him and says she read an interesting article about his cleaning team. He realizes his sister is planning to join the team as well. That's Han Yubin, and she sees no problem with the job after all. Her brother has been telling her to find work for a while, thinking about the requirement to unlock his next skill. Kim concludes that the task will be very simple. He just needs to maintain a workload intensity that matches the salary and have an appropriate work environment. However, the problem is that the cleaning team has neither of those, yet their job satisfaction rate is at 18%. The protagonist hopes that sooner or later the workload intensity will decrease when a new team is formed, and a proper work environment can be created by someone who knows the job and quickly understands the cleaning crew, being exactly the kind of person the new group needs most. Standing in front of our boy, the man with the scar on his mouth stares at him firmly. He then says he heard about the situation in the association and the formation of a new cleaning team. Since he's been unemployed ever since leaving his guild, he'd like to do the kid a favor by joining the team. After taking a sip of his coffee, Kim says that actually the man should be begging to join if he wants his name on the list, instead of bragging about being a former vice leader of a guild. Furious, Tao-won asks if the protagonist knows who he's talking to, and says he'll regret that attitude. But the boy replies that he's already regretting it. As the man walks out, the young man wonders who this guy thinks he is to act so arrogant for being just a rank A. We find out the other interviews didn't go much differently. All the candidates were just fools who thought they were competent and acted like they were doing a favor. Holding all the files in his hands, Kim wonders how Payan even bothered to make such a useless list. Suddenly, Young calls to thank the young man for finding a good candidate, which confuses him. She then explains that a young woman named Yubin Han is waiting to meet with him. So the protagonist needs to hurry and get there as soon as possible. Arriving at the designated place, the red-haired girl introduces herself. Kim stares at her with an expression like he has no idea who she is. Next to him, Yum asks for the boy finds people like this, but he has no clue what she's talking about. Hands on her hips, the candidate says she expected someone more charismatic. The protagonist replies that they can proceed with the interview. Once seated, he asks what made her want to join the cleaning team. Yubin says the job suits her. Kim disagrees. The girl then explains that her hunter status was revoked when she was fired. So now, since she has no abilities or anything left, she thought of applying for the position. The protagonist then asks if she has any knowledge of the cleaning team's duties. Yubin says yes and asks why he didn't ask about the reason she got fired. The boy says he doesn't care about that. The girl then says that all the cleaning teams in the US ever did was clean up dungeon byproducts, which makes the protagonist realize she actually knows something. But out of nowhere, the former hunter says she knows that the cleaning teams in Korea coordinate and lead operations. Eyes wide, Kim wonders what on earth she's talking about. He decides to ask if she came there just because of the article published about him and his team. When she confirms, he tells her she's mistaken. The Korean cleaning team is no different from the ones in the US. With a small laugh, Yubin says she knew he'd say that. Curious, the protagonist asks what she means. Nervously, the girl says that when she joined the American branch, they told her the same thing. But she knew it was all bait to weed out idiots who were just trying to sneak into the strategy team. Looking at the girl's file, Kim thinks she might be crazy, but she has excellent qualities. She's a former hunter from the International Association and belonged to an upper tier of the Berserker class. The only problem is that she has nothing in common with his cleaning team members, even if she doesn't have the inflated ego the other candidates had. The protagonist then concludes that she's extremely talented, but not for this kind of work, so he has no choice but to reject her. Suddenly, he remembers Park saying that Sang's sister was a hunter for the International Association. When he asks Yubin about this, she panics and begs him not to say anything about her interview. That confirmation excites our boy, because if her brother is part of the team, she wouldn't dare disrespect the cleaning crew's work. Out of nowhere, Sang bursts into the room yelling that he told his sister not to come there since she doesn't even clean her own house. Shouting, Yubin says it was he who told her to go out and find a job. Furious, he says it wasn't supposed to be in the same place as his. All the while, Kim watches the scene blankly, thinking maybe he was wrong to assume this would be a good idea. Sometime later at the association building, we see the protagonist gathered with two other people for the interview. One is the HR team leader, and the other is the general director of the association. Thinking to himself, the young man notes that at first they probably wouldn't have offered him a seat at the table. But Young said it made no sense to recruit for the cleaning team without including a member of the cleaning team. Looking at the candidates, he realizes that they are all overqualified for the job, ranging from a vice leader of a guild to a former strategy team leader and a former hunter from the International Association, who ultimately became his favorite candidate because of her previous position. The HR team leader informs everyone that she will begin the interview with a few questions, then asks how they would deal with a situation where an unbeatable monster appears. Woo-hyuk starts and says that unless it was a dungeon with multiple zones, he would abandon the operation. To form a plan, Chulsik says he would proceed with the subjugation after requesting support from the control team. Tawon says that stopping the operation and continuing the subjugation with another team would be the best course of action. Thinking to himself, Kim says that actually, that's a perfect answer. Then it's Yubin's turn to say what she would do. Staring at the young woman, the general director assumes she must be the protagonist's candidate, while the HR team leader reflects on the girl being the former hunter from the International Association. Yubin then begins by saying that if she realized in the middle of the subjugation that the monster was unbeatable, she would conclude that the operation had already failed. Then she would rather eliminate herself than be embarrassed trying to fight. Her answer leaves everyone in complete silence. Thinking to himself, our boy admits he really did choose a crazy person as his candidate. Meanwhile, far away, young Minju and So Yeon are enjoying some free time after the report season. Curious, the cleaner asks the short-haired woman if it's true that all the candidates are former hunters. She confirms, but says the idea is to replicate Kim's team. Minju says that in that case, they're underestimating the guy because that's not something you can just pull off easily. Picking up her tea, Young says that actually the higher-ups just like copying whatever's trending to get attention, and that she can already imagine the candidates they brought just to pretend the cleaning team is theirs. The hunter then says she thought the cleaning team was finally getting the recognition it deserves. Looking concerned, the woman says they better hope Kim's candidate wins. Hearing this makes the other two curious to know who the protagonist chose. Without giving details, Young says she doesn't know much about the girl, only that she seems like an interesting candidate. We return to the interview. Someone asks the young woman what else needs to be done during an operation besides killing monsters. Shrugging, Yubin asks if the person is referring to equipment, clearly thinking the question is stupid. Crossing her arms, the young woman asks if performance is considered more important than protecting people in the Korean Association. Quite embarrassed, Kim wonders how the girl even got into the American branch, then states that he wouldn't mind if she failed the interview if Tawon didn't end up being the strongest candidate. Because if the goal is to improve job satisfaction on the cleaning team, the man would be the worst choice. Suddenly, a realization hits our boy, and he starts wondering why not just reject all of them in that case. The HR team leader asks if the protagonist has any more questions. Kim then asks how many pieces a centipede-type monster should be cut into. The woman says that's not an appropriate question, but our boy argues that his question makes sense because it involves a cleaning team task. All the candidates stay silent, and the young man concludes that none of them know the answer, deciding to move on to the next question, which is about the most effective cleaning method for removing monster slime and human strawberry juice from walls. When challenged, the protagonist slams his hand on the table and says those are basic concepts any of them should know, and that even without knowing the opinions of the other interviewers as far as he's concerned, they all failed. Sometime later, when the sun was already setting, Tawon approaches and asks if all that discussion was really for nothing. Our boy then says he may not be completely satisfied with his candidate, but she's definitely better than him. Smiling, the man says the boy only ruined the interview because things weren't going his way, but that in any case, the girl will never pass the interview. Thinking to himself, Kim wonders why the former guild leader is so confident, concluding there must be something wrong. Suddenly, seeing Yumin beside him, he jumps in surprise. The young woman then asks what kind of nonsense that was earlier, since he could have at least warned her about the questions instead of embarrassing his own candidate. Crouching down, our boy asks if in the US it's normal to accept unprepared and incompetent candidates, since if she applied voluntarily, she should have at least prepared for the interview. Pushing further, he questions whether she really thought joining the cleaning team would be that easy, and without letting her respond, he says that if it were up to him, the interview round wouldn't continue. But since that's not possible, he advises her to at least prepare next time instead of improvising. Night quickly falls, bringing a sky full of stars. We see Yubin, who does not look happy at all. Full of rage, she thinks that she's never been so humiliated in her life, not even in America, and especially not by a janitor. Sang shows up and shouting, asks her to stop punching the pillow because she's making too much noise. Realizing his sister is truly angry, the boy says she should be grateful Kim didn't spit in her face, since he gets furious when it comes to anything related to the cleaning team. So all he has to say is that she shouldn't get her hopes up. She's at a disadvantage. Yumin replies that she doesn't care, she wouldn't accept the offer anyway, and she's not interested in the practical task. Since Kim thinks she knows nothing about cleaning, so participating in the next stage would just make her look like a fool, more of a hindrance than a help. Making things worse, Sang says he's actually glad to hear that because he considered quitting if she got the job. Suddenly, someone rings the doorbell, but the siblings say they're not expecting anyone. When they open the door, they come face to face with Minju and Se-yin, who apologize for the late hour, but say they'd like to talk about the second stage of the selection process, hoping they might be able to help Yubin. Hearing this leaves the ex-hunter stunned. Inside the apartment, Minju says she figured Yubin could use a little help with the practical task, so she brought along some specialists. Sang and Yubin's jaws drop when they see Park Young and the control team leader standing right there in the living room. Clearing his throat, the man in the brown suit says he'll get straight to the point and shouts that the young woman has to get the job for everyone's sake. Stigyeon tells Payan to calm down, but the man keeps yelling that if she doesn't pass, they're all going down. Mouth wide open, the ex-hunter wonders if this kind of thing is normal in the Korean Association, and thanking them all for their enthusiasm, she announces that she's decided not to take part in the test anymore, leaving the guests in complete despair. 1 week later, the day of the practical interview arrives. Standing beside Yubin, Kim says he's surprised to see her there. She asks why he expected her not to show up, and why he chose her as a candidate if he thinks she's incapable of anything. Glancing at her out of the corner of his eye, the protagonist wonders where all this confidence is coming from and why she has dark circles under her eyes. He then says that even if she prepared, none of it will matter. Yubin replies that she's there to earn an apology for being insulted last time. But the boy says he has no intention of apologizing, just for telling the truth, so she should keep dreaming. Smiling, the ex-hunter says she's looking forward to seeing whether that's really true. Annoyed, the protagonist asks what's with that attitude and if everyone in America is like that. The girl simply says that thanks to him, she had a tough week because of her teammates. Kim wonders what his candidate is even talking about, but the general director orders everyone to gather. He then announces that the practical task will take place inside a real dungeon and that the candidates will be accompanied by their evaluators. Because of that, they'll face a variety of problems, and their performance will be assessed based on how they handle each situation. One of the guys asks if the dungeon has already been cleared, but the director says no, the subjugation is part of the task. And since everyone there is a former hunter, there shouldn't be any issues, so they can begin. After forming a single file line, one by one they pass through the dungeon portal, quickly arriving on the other side. Holding a piece of paper, Lee announces that a problem has occurred, because Strategy Team 4 requested support, but there are no other teams available besides the current one. One of the men then says that in that case, it's better to finish the subjugation in 20 minutes and then go provide support. The others agree. Thinking to himself, Kim says that everyone there is as capable as the current Strategy Team leaders, so the higher-ups won't back down. While reflecting, the protagonist writes notes in the candidate evaluation chart, concluding that if they make the mistake of not knowing what the priority is, he'll have a valid reason to fail them all. Suddenly, Yubin says she has an objection, stating that 20 minutes isn't enough, so it would be better to retreat and continue the subjugation later. Mocking her, the other candidates tell the girl to go home if she doesn't have the guts, and Lee says he'll go with the majority opinion, leaving the young woman visibly irritated. Shocked, the protagonist realizes that his candidate's answer is actually correct. After all, the task isn't about becoming a hunter, but about joining the cleaning team, which means they would need to complete both the subjugation and the cleanup in just 20 minutes, a very short time to do both. Intrigued, Kim wonders how Yubin figured that out so quickly and what exactly happened last week. Next, we see what appears to be the hand of a creature, which starts roaring furiously at the group. All the candidates begin activating their magic and summoning their weapons. Talwan is the first to attack using his skill called Haywire, which causes his entire body to be engulfed in red light. Suddenly, a dark slime flies through the air. It's the monster's strawberry juice, now under attack by the blonde man using his skill Auburn's teeth. The chosen strategies seem to be working, given the wounds on the creature's body. The next to attack is Yubin with her powerful sword. Jumping into the air, the young woman lands a punch on the monster's head, knocking it to the ground. Impressed, the evaluators comment that this is exactly what's expected from former hunters, but that the girl's skill looked much weaker compared to the others. Kim cuts in and issues a warning to the cleaning team, announcing that a problem has arisen. Everyone turns around to listen to the boy, and Talwan takes the chance to give a sly smile, remembering a conversation he had the other day with the general director, who told him that the practical task guidelines were created by Kim. The man said no one warned him he'd have to do actual cleaning, but his recruiter replied that for now he's just a mere candidate and will have to do whatever it takes to pass. However, the documents he received would help him a lot, as they contain the cleaning task written by the protagonist, which would begin as soon as the first boss was defeated. The man also said none of it could leak, because he really wanted former Vice Guild leader to lead the new team. Smiling, Talwan said this was like a piece of cake waiting to be devoured, and that passing the task would be a breeze for him. We return to the present moment, where the protagonist explains that the dungeon must be cleaned by the team currently available, but it's almost time to go support the strategy team as promised. Moreover, all the other teammates died during the subjugation, leaving only them to handle the cleanup. Gritting his teeth, Taewon realizes this is nothing like what was written in the document. With his hands in his pockets, Kim says that each of them must provide a solution to the problem, one that is quick and can be completed within 20 minutes. With a dark look, our boy wonders if the man really thought he'd just leave the task the way it was written on paper. Sometime later, we see the protagonist counting down, and the countdown is almost over, which means Woo-hyuk's time is up. Stressed, the man throws the rag he was using to clean onto the ground. The HR team leader shows up and announces that he's been eliminated, while our boy concludes that he clearly knows nothing about cleaning. Now it's Taewon's turn, and he's not happy at all. Furious, he wonders if an A-rank former Vice Guild leader really has to kneel down and clean that mess, and how he's supposed to do that in just 20 minutes. Turning to Kim, the man shouts that the boy created that task on purpose because it's completely impossible. And looking at the general director, he says that wasn't what they agreed on, leaving the man and Lee visibly embarrassed. The former Vice Guild leader then says there's no way he's doing that. Beside him, Yubin replies that no one forced him to participate. Irritated, Taewon asks what the girl means by that, but Kim steps in and questions whether he's really refusing to do the task, because in that case, it's Yubin's turn. Receiving no response from the ex-hunter, the protagonist says he'll take her silence as a no. But the girl charges toward the creature, asking the boy to make sure he times it properly. As she approaches, she throws what seem to be bags of cleaning products and begins slashing them open with her large sword, using quick and efficient movements. She then demonstrates that, besides applying chemicals, she's also dismantling the monster at the same time, while blocking all the gas and strawberry juice leaking from the carcass. Kim finally realizes that the girl had help from her own team. Yubin throws ropes with hooks on the ends, which quickly lash onto the dismantled parts of the monster. Then she starts pulling with great strength, making all the attached pieces come flying toward her. Mouth agape, the protagonist thinks that at this pace, she'll finish the task on time, which means his plan to fail everyone is going to fall apart, as he'll have no valid reason to deduct points from her. Suddenly, Taewon says there's something wrong and asks if Kim shared the task details with Yubin. Realizing this is a great opportunity, the protagonist says he might have done that. The man then claims it's unfair. After finishing the job, Yubin stares directly at both of them and asks what the former Vice Guild leader is saying about her, instead of being ashamed to admit that he only accused her because he failed to prepare in a week. Provoking him, the ex-hunter tells him to be honest, that he's only here because of his connections with the general manager, and that she was honestly looking forward to seeing how competent he'd be as a candidate, given his confidence. But all of her expectations were for nothing, since he never actually became a true leader of the guild he was in. Furious, Taewon activates his ability, claiming the girl will regret insulting him like that. Laughing, Yubin asks if he knows why she was fired from the American branch, then states that it was because she can't resist crushing people like him who only talk and do nothing. It's clear a major battle is about to break out. Nervous, the ex-vice leader realizes the girl is stronger than he thought, but still charges forward, deciding to fight anyway. Yubin activates her ability to protect herself from her opponent's incoming attack, but Kim grabs the girl's arm and steps on Taewon, asking what the two of them think they're doing, since that's not appropriate behavior in front of the evaluators. Surprised and angry, the man orders the protagonist to get his foot off him, but Kim replies that he's nothing more than an A rank, and that since he made the first move, this counts as self-defense. Looking at Yubin, our boy asks her to put her weapon away too, but the girl doesn't seem very willing to comply. Still holding the hunter's arm, the protagonist notices she's resisting the request, but lets her go anyway, thinking to himself that berserkers really do have difficult temperaments. Then Kim announces that the practical task is officially over from that moment forward. Sometime later outside, someone apologizes. It's the protagonist apologizing to Yubin just as she had asked earlier. Thinking to himself, our boy admits that despite everything, the girl also proved to be extremely efficient. Glancing sideways, the ex-hunter says that actually it was his teammates who helped her a lot. But the protagonist replies that it doesn't matter, since in the end she had to learn a lot to complete the mission. Agreeing, the girl says in that case she'll accept the apology even if they never see each other again. Kim asks if that means she's no longer interested in the position. Confirming, Yubin said she had already told him she only wanted an apology, and that after the scene she caused that day, she's sure she has no chance of passing, not to mention the job is too difficult. So she's going to head out for a walk. After hearing all that, we can see that our boy is clearly not pleased. The next day, in front of a dungeon gate, Sang yells, asking if Kim has lost his mind, and what the guy was thinking, accepting his sister into the cleaning team. The day after the recruitment evaluations, we find out that a sudden issue came up. Lying on her couch at home, Yubin says she's glad the protagonist apologized and all, but she still doesn't understand him. He matched the speed of her ability, and even stopped her attack with just one hand, despite being a mere janitor. Restless, the young woman wonders why someone like Kim is on the cleaning team, then decides not to care anymore when suddenly her phone rings. Picking it up to see what it is, the former hunter discovers she's been accepted into the cleaning team. To her complete shock, we see that her scream was heard even by people walking down on the street. Someone punches a wall with full force, It's a mustached man, furious that someone else got their hands on the operation file. Chloe says apparently a copy was still out there, which makes Jason, the head of the International Association's control team, even more enraged. Shouting, he asks why the person has to cause a scene now of all times, referring to the former hunter, Yuben Han. We go back several months to when an accident happened during an operation led by the young woman. We see that the ex-hunter was nearly hit, but another girl with long hair saved her. In the process, Angel ended up injuring her arm, and the two seemed cornered by the large beast with red eyes. Yuben then decides to send her ally away to call for backup, but Angel simply sighs and throws something toward the redhead. Holding the necklace, the hunter asks why her friend just handed her most precious possession to her. Smiling, Angel asks her to leave and save her own life, then activates her limit break ability, which throws Yuben far away. Screaming, the young woman says she'll bring help right away. Her friend must stay alive because she'll kill her if she dies. Heading toward the massive creature, Angel simply says goodbye. As she flies and passes through the gate, we see Yuben calling for backup on the radio, begging for someone to respond when suddenly another voice comes through the device, saying no teams are available at the moment, so the request can't be fulfilled. Desperate, the hunter says she knows it's a lie, that she's only asking for one team. But someone on the other end insists that no teams are available. We discover that the one responsible was Jason, who didn't want to use the backup to avoid spending more money, especially not on a hunter who wasn't worth it, since he needed to survive. So even though Angel lost her life, according to him, there was nothing to worry about, since the higher-ups didn't care and Yuben lost control, which gave him the chance to dismiss her, making everything go according to plan, until Yuben decided to leave and take the control team's operation file, which could reveal the truth of what happened that day to the world, as well as all the embezzlements and corrupt acts he committed for a long time. Less irritated now, he tells Chloe to do whatever it takes to get the file back. The woman then asks if she should try negotiating. Without answering, Jason asks if she has located Yuben. The woman confirms and says that according to the records, she found the young woman joined the association again, but in the Korean branch, as a member of the cleaning team, not the strategy team. Intrigued, the man asks what the young woman is doing, but says it'll be a good opportunity since his branch will propose a joint operation with the Korean branch next week. Chloe confirms again, and the man says she must make sure the deal goes through no matter what. And holding a globe, he says that Yuben can run and hide as much as she wants, but she won't escape. We return to Korea, where it's been a week since the ex-hunter was hired, and we find out that Kim is now the head of the Supernatural Ability Management Association's Team 3, a role that bothers him a bit, but also gives him authority. While cleaning a dungeon, Sang says that ever since the guy was promoted, he's lost his touch. Se-yeon then says they need to work together, which irritates our boy who no longer wanted to clean. Walking up to the duo, he reveals that he thought the promotion would help him unlock some abilities, but he's just the leader of a cleaning team with no power to make any changes at headquarters. Suddenly, Pyam calls to inform that a dungeon has appeared in Namtaryong and the team will need an available cleaning squad. The protagonist says there isn't any, so the man asks if he should send the strategy team first. Kim says that would only make things worse and asks for a minute to see what he can do. Calling Yuben, he asks if she's busy. She replies that her team is on their way to lunch. The protagonist then says another dungeon has appeared and that in this case, she must get to the site with her team as soon as possible. Furious, Yuben asks why it has to be her team. The boy says it's because there's no other available for that task, but she's not capable. He'll have to find another way. Determined to prove herself, the young woman says she's already on her way, but that he now owes her one. We find out that the previous week, Kim passed all the heavy dungeons to Yuben, which drastically reduced his team's workload by half. Suddenly, a message appears saying that the skill replica has been unlocked due to the increased satisfaction rate of the protagonist's team. Sometime later elsewhere, Park's son enters the room saying he ironed his dad's clothes. Surprised, the man says he didn't need to do that, then notices how worn his work uniform is. Smiling, he crouches down and tells the little boy he won't need to iron his work clothes anymore because he's been promoted to manager of the cleaning team at the Supernatural Ability Management Association. Out on the street, two guys compliment the man's look and congratulate him on the new position, also wishing him luck on his first day. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we see Lee Min-ju and another young woman who doesn't seem pleased with what she's reading on the paper she's holding. We find out that everyone is gathered for the regular strategy team assembly, held in the command team's office. Jaehyun tells Pyam that the biggest issue is that all operations were organized to align perfectly with the cleaning team's schedule, which is very suspicious since Kim took over as leader of the cleaning team. Sweating, the man says subjugations are still the priority, but it's necessary to avoid overloading, considering the cleaner's schedule. Disagreeing, the pink-haired young man claims that if their job is to clean, the team should learn to handle heavy hours, and that all of this is only happening because Kim has too many connections. Slamming the table, Hunter claims that this could have been avoided if an incompetent man hadn't been appointed. Suddenly, Minju shouts that she understands their point, but that everyone there is being extremely petty. Another man says that just because the young woman is at the meeting doesn't mean she has any authority, placing several reports on the table, and Hunter states that the subjugation rate increased by 30% compared to the previous month. Not letting Lee speak, a young woman asks in how many of the 100 completed dungeons there was a problem, that immediately answers that not a single incident occurred. So it's laughable to hear them arguing over such a competent team leader, and that if the association isn't made up only of strategy teams, then working together shouldn't be a problem. Furious, two hunters argue that this is still unfair and that the young woman will realize it when she's left alone, since if she wants to maintain the current situation, she must handle everything perfectly on her own. The others agree and start saying that their teams won't take part in any operations next week, and that will be a great chance for the young woman to show her performance during the loop dungeon. Following the hunters, other leaders announce that teams 5 and 8 are also out, ending the assembly right there and leaving Minju and Payan in a tight spot. Suddenly, Dongwoo shows up at the door and apologizes for the interruption, but says he received a call from the US branch who asked to speak with Payan. With wide eyes, the man shows he wasn't expecting that. Picking up the phone, he says the manager is out for now and that he's standing in, but he knows where to find the person responsible for making decisions. The call makes the other hunters uneasy. The man then says he received an invitation from the American branch to take part in a joint operation, but since everyone there already stated they won't be working next week, he'll pass the task to Team 2. Mocking, Payan asks why the hunters suddenly looked so interested when they heard the US branch would be involved. Lee then says he doesn't mind the operation being assigned to Team 2, but since loop dungeons are complicated, it would be better to appoint a supervisor to plan the operation. Minju quickly realizes what the man is suggesting. Payan then says he agrees, and in that case, he will appoint Kim as the supervisor, stating right after that he will now end the assembly since there's nothing left to discuss. Meanwhile, elsewhere we see the protagonist asking what happened with Yubin, and how a former international hunter can make cleaning a mere blue-level dungeon so difficult, instead of using her unique ability. Since then, there'd be no way the monster's carcass would be left so intact. The young woman then says that if she did that, the cleanup would be harder. Kim replies that this only applies in training because in real life, subjugation always comes first. So one should never choose an inefficient way to subdue just to make cleaning easier. In her thoughts, Yubin realizes she was completely wrong in thinking the guy favored the cleaning team. Instead of telling the girl to go eat, the protagonist asks her to clean another dungeon before taking a break, which leaves her absolutely furious. Suddenly, Kim's phone rings. On the other end, someone introduces themselves as a member of the American branch of the International Association. Turning away, our boy apologizes for not being able to assist Yubin's team since he's received an important call and will have to leave quickly. Somewhere else, he wonders what the American branch could want with him. Jason then says they were informed about the loop dungeon that will open in Seoul next week, and since that type of operation doesn't happen often on American soil, he'd like to propose a joint mission. We find out that a loop dungeon is special because it rewinds time to just before the subjugation. If the dungeon boss isn't killed properly, there's no limit to the number of loops, which means the subjugation can repeat over and over until the right conditions are met. So the fact that the American branch is proposing this makes things much more exciting. Suddenly, Kim remembers something unpleasant, revealing that in his past life, he received that same call. And during the subjugation, the Americans stole the time stone and simply ran away, causing a huge uproar at the Seoul branch, which had taken full responsibility for the operation but ended up with only a small share of the profits. Because of that, the protagonist decides to thank them for the offer but proceed with the operation on his own. Surprised, Jason says he understands the young man might be a bit taken aback by the sudden request, but forgot to mention that his branch will provide financial support for the mission. Smiling, our boy wonders how the man dares to try bribing him like that, only to change his mind quickly when the man offers $1 million. Trembling, he thinks that's actually a pretty decent amount. Before deciding whether to accept, he reads what Minju sent about the assembly. Upon discovering that he'll be the mission supervisor and that only Team 2 will be participating, Kim concludes that his only way out is to accept the joint operation with the Americans. Looking at Yubin's daughter, Jason says it would be best to carry out the mission with a cleaning team. Falling for it like a fool, the protagonist says the man doesn't need to worry, he has just the right team for the job. Smiling deviously, the man thanks him and says in that case, they'll be seeing each other soon. In his thoughts, the protagonist says he'll have to postpone cleaning duties next week to join the mission with Team 6, then remembers that Yubin used to work in the American branch, which means putting the young woman on the mission might not be a best idea. A week passes and the day of the joint operation with the American headquarters arrives. We see the Seoul team wearing their black raincoats, talking to the American branch team who also chose to wear raincoats. In the background is the massive portal to the loop dungeon. With no rain protection at all, the cleaning team wonders what the two squads have so much to discuss. Kim then says that even experienced hunters struggle with loot dungeons, which explains the tension, especially since there's no guarantee they'll get out of there anytime soon. Hearing this sends Seon into panic, coming closer saying ask the guy not to scare the girl like that, especially with the American branch present. In his thoughts, the protagonist says they're exactly the problem, because there's no telling what they're plotting. He then remembers that the place is so dangerous it once drove a hunter insane after repeating the loop 1,400 times, even though that happened before he knew exactly how to subjugate that dungeon. However, with the Americans present, Kim concludes he won't be able to help much, so he'll leave everything in Minju's hands, while secretly taking the time stone. Suddenly, someone approaches our protagonist. It's Yubin, who's furious for only now finding out that the operation would be a joint one, saying jokes that the two are moving fast, while Seon says they should save the flirting for later. Looking at the former hunter, Kim says he understands her frustration, but now they'll have to see it through to the end, especially since the American branch won't cause problems in an operation like this. Crossing her arms, Yubin says the guy has no idea what they're capable of. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says she's aggressive, but she's probably right. The Americans are definitely up to something. And if anything goes wrong, the leaders of the other teams will surely blame the cleaning crew. So he'll have to be very careful not to let all his efforts go to waste. Jason approaches Kim and says it's a pleasure to meet him, introducing himself, followed by Chloe, who says she's the support team manager. The man then says he's heard a lot about how competent the boy is. Modest, the protagonist, says it's all overblown. Jason looks at Yubin and asks how she's doing. Irritated, the girl says she's just fine, but it's sad to know he's there too. Keeping his composure, Jason laughs and says he was thrilled to hear she'd be part of this operation. The former hunter replies that she can't say she's happier in her new role, but work is work. Crouching down, the man says that in that case, they should separate personal from professional matters. After all, what happened with Angel was a disgrace. But he'd like to ask the young woman first if she took something that belonged to him when she left. Yubin simply says she didn't take anything. The man then says they'll talk more later. As he walks away, he welcomes everyone, then asks Chloe to take care of the time stone and says he doesn't care what she does with the item, since he'll be busy trying to recover the file. Up ahead, Minju asks everyone to gather, as she'd like to give the final instructions. The young woman says that even though not many people are taking part in the mission, she believes finishing the dungeon won't be a problem. However, since it's a loot-type dungeon, it's impossible to predict how long it will take, so everyone should avoid overexerting themselves until all the subjugation conditions are clarified one by one. With everything ready, the hunter announces that it's time to begin. Everyone passes through the dungeon portal, and after 3 hours of operation, we see the team celebrating what appears to be a final blow. Minju, as leader, charges forward to strike the massive creature that seems to have human-like teeth. Mid-air, the young woman activates her skill called Divinity of Thousand Arms, then unleashes a flurry of impressive blows. With the creature defeated, she notifies Kim, who tells her to maintain the current pace and conserve energy, then asks Sang how the marking process is going. The boy says it's going well. The protagonist then tells him not to focus only on the passageways, but also to mark the rooms that have already been checked. Next, Kim asks Seon to check on the team members and their condition every time a loop occurs, also instructing that the carcasses be incinerated so they don't fall behind with the cleanup. Looking at Yubin, he says she can start mapping the inside of the dungeon, which won't be too hard, given her former position. The young woman agrees, but asks if that wasn't supposed to be his job. Kim says there's no such thing here, while thinking that's exactly why he doesn't like having smart kids around. We learn that so far, Minju's team is advancing with the subjugation while the American branch supports them from the rear, and that everything is going according to plan, except for Jason's presence, who seems to turn awkwardly to look at the cleaning team, as if waiting for the right moment to act. Thinking, Kim decides that whatever it is, it's none of his business because there's no way that man will get his hands on the time stone. Sometime later, our protagonist asks if Minju has already checked every room except the one they're currently in. The young woman confirms, and he then says that must be the boss room. Turning around, the hunter announces to everyone that it's time to go in. A bright light bursts from the doorway. Inside, Minju says the team has entered, but they don't see the boss. Receiving no response, she concludes the signal must be weak in that area, then asks everyone to stay alert. Suddenly, a large spear flies toward the group. Shouting, the hunter warns everyone to be careful. Debris flies everywhere as the hunters try to dodge the attack. Looking up, a young man realizes the situation is much more complicated than they thought. The monster strikes him with full force using its massive weapon, catching the others completely off guard. After that, all we see is the poor hunter hanging from the boss's spear, and the boss looks furious. Outside, the rest of the group hears only thudding against the door. Worried, Jason thinks he needs to retrieve the file quickly before time runs out. The problem is that Kim seems to be watching him, as if monitoring his every move. Grabbing the radio, the protagonist asks Minju for an update on the operation. Suddenly, a loud crash erupts. Then Strategy Team 2 reports that the subjugation is complete. Our boy immediately notices that the hunter doesn't look well, which means something went wrong. He then decides it's time to go in, only to be met with a war zone, a battle that came with casualties. Everyone is left speechless at the sight. Our protagonist calls out for Minju, who turns around looking deeply shaken. Running into his arms, she says the attack happened so fast, there was nothing she could do. Gritting his teeth, Kim realizes he overestimated Team 2's combat ability because he was too focused on the American branch. Suddenly, a message appears stating that the dungeon's subjugation conditions were not met, and that there are 5 seconds remaining until the loop restarts. Everyone stares at the message in disbelief, because now they'll have to fight all over again, except for Kim, who shows little reaction. A strong blue light appears. Shortly after, we find out that Shanwell and Kwanli didn't make it. In a moment of silence, everyone gathers around the bodies, except for Minju, who says she's deeply sorry. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says not even the American branch foresaw this, given the emergency meeting they're holding at that very moment. We find out that all non-essential personnel were sent away, the only issue being Team 2, who are now in no condition, physically or mentally, to fight again. And that Minju is the worst off, deeply affected by the death of her comrades. Kneeling down, Kim decides he can't let the young woman deal with this alone. The hunter asks him to teach her something, and he asks what she wants to know. With a dark look, the young woman says she wants him to teach her the best way to make the monster suffer, because now she intends to repeat the loop over and over again, just to get revenge. Flicking her on the forehead, Kim tells her to stop looking at him like that, then states that what she needs isn't revenge, a solution to conquer the dungeon. So she must pull herself together and stay calm, analyzing the situation like a true team leader should. Minju then says that the first boss they fought emitted a blue light, while the second emitted red. Since nothing else stood out to her, the boy says the second monster also glowed red after being defeated, which means there's a reason for the bosses to emit different colored lights, and that the blue light might be a clue to completing the dungeon. Minju then says that in that case, both bosses need to be defeated at the same time, thanking the protagonist for the enlightening conversation. Taking the lead, she asks everyone to gather. It's time to create a new operation plan. She then announces that this time they'll split into 2 teams for a simultaneous subjugation. And since the signal will drop as soon as the first monster appears, both teams must begin at the exact same time, even though they're exhausted. Minju finishes by saying that everything will work out since the American branch is also here. But even so, it wouldn't hurt to cross their fingers and hope there are no casualties this time. Approaching Kim, she asks if he's sure Yubin will be okay, since Jason specifically requested her on his team, saying there was no one else with her level of talent. The hunter tried to intervene, but the former hunter stated that she would accept any role given to her, considering the circumstances. In response, our boy says the hunter should worry more about herself, since Yubin is very strong, so it would be better to focus on not letting her guard down. Thinking to himself, the protagonist reveals that he only accepted the situation because he wanted to uncover Jason's true intentions. We return to the boss, who emits a red light, furiously attacking the hunter Minju, while Kim tells the others to get ready to provide support. The other hunters immediately activate their abilities, launching multiple attacks at the creature, which seems determined to leave no one alive. Without any fear, Minju charges in with full force, but quickly realizes something went wrong, just as the protagonist senses there isn't enough firepower there. Suddenly, the hunter is thrown far away, panicking her teammates. Even though she was nearly hit, the young woman didn't receive a fatal blow. However, to her misfortune, the monster seems fixated solely on her, who keeps falling as flames appear around her. Launched by Kim, who not only prevented his friend from falling but also blocked the creature's hand. Minju is in disbelief at what she's seeing, while our boy orders her to grab her sword, saying she needs to do this with her own hands, since the rest of the team is in danger if the fight doesn't end soon. The young woman then says she can't move her arm. Staring at her firmly, the boy asks if she's developing grip strength in her left hand, then states that all the training was for the moment when she'd need to protect her teammates. Thinking to himself, the protagonist says this would have been impossible for the Minju from before his regression. But the young woman is no longer the same, now that she's awakened her blade dancer ability, becoming a perfectly ambidextrous swordswoman.
Guys, that's the end of the video. If you liked this video, please leave a comment in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. Like the video and share it too. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.